All right, looks like I'm live on D Live, and now I'm live on YouTube. All right, folks, I am both late and gay, but you wouldn't want me, early and straight, would you? In any case, all right, looks like I'm live on D Live. Every time Entropy does this to me. uh, well, hey guys, as you all pour in, welcome. The show was double checked last minute, dotted all my I's, crossed my T's, um, made sure my P's were totally closed in. I don't know. the uh, the issue yesterday I had to check on while I also made some tasty, tasty tea because I don't know if I can drink that much coffee again as I did yesterday because I was up way, way too late. Good old matcha. All right, guys, just checking around real quick, making sure everything's running good. Get what I have for the day prepared. Well, it always already is prepared. Just got to get it up here. Insert your that which she said joke. If I could talk. All right, guys, I got a good bit to talk about. Not a ton though, because I want to save that for Friday actually, because I want to get through more of the vampire economy, and I want to push through, try and get through Basiat this week. Um, so I have no plans to stream tomorrow, but if I did for some reason decide to do an impromptu stream, that's probably the only reason why, is just to get through it. As you guys know, I have only so much time today as I have another show to do at 7 p.m. So I don't know if I can go over. It should be a really good show. Joshua Ham should be there, one of our regular guests. Or not regular guests, sorry, regular regular audience, regular chatters, but Joshua does, from what I understand, good work with local governments as far as trying to get them to have their heads out of their own rears. All right, looks like I got some viewers. Let's say, starting to get surprised here, guys, because normally I have a viewer or two by now, unless I set in the wrong time. I didn't know if Don was streaming. I know Don's streaming again tonight, and I didn't, we didn't coordinate or anything. So I guess when the ends justify the memes is on, he's going to be on too. So we'll see what you guys choose to do with the crossovers. But one way or another, I mean, it's like the stream he does, I'll probably watch later. So it's the way it goes, right? In any case, well, hello, Val. How are we doing today? In any case, as we get into it, just want to remind everybody there are links in the description for ways to donate. Um, unless I get certain criteria, I'm never going to be monetized on YouTube, nor do I care to be, because, like, let's face it, as soon as it happens, they're going to take it away. So, if it ever happens. So if you would like to donate, you can go over to Entropy and D Live. That is for anyone new who's not aware, or the Subscribe Star. More importantly, though, please sub, guys. I am growing very slowly, but am growing generally daily, with 1 to 2 subs a day. And I'd like to get the channel up to 200. I actually like to get it up to at least 300, so everything I upload here will back upload over on Odyssey, and I don't have to do it by myself, because I can't get BitChute to work, and Odyssey told me a while back that I had to have at least 300 subs. So there's that. You're working as well? Yeah, I thought you normally work while, I mean, most people work. I understand when I run the stream. Um, the stream is probably best anyways, not for visual presentation. I don't necessarily have this great production going on here. love to do well-produced things. I don't really have the time to the spare time to tinker around with all of it. I mean, I can make the spare time, but then, you end up missing out on other things that you need to get done or like to put on the stream. Like I'm constantly ensconced in news. So if I have to concentrate on something, I can't really listen to what the news is on the background. Like depending on how hard I have to concentrate. Obviously, I've made various little things for segments on here, so it's not like I haven't tinkered around with it. And I really would like to do some edited content, probably while my daughter is first here. I'll probably start updating some of the story times so that those still have some continuity, so they're put back out. Finish up the what is it? Sephiroth Rose's book on nihilism. At least the first chapter of The Great Reset. I need to finish that. And I was reading, guys, I did not sleep last night, like at all. So forgive me. What was it? Fagin. The guy that wrote about Freemasonry was part of the John Birch Society for a long time. I can't think of his name. In any case, like I said, this is how it goes when I don't sleep. I came to bed at like 3 a.m. I probably fell asleep at 5 a.m. and I was up at 8:30. So we got a long day to go yet. All right. So that's enough of me running my mouth. Let's get into some stuff. So first thing I actually want to do, because I was talking about it before, is read some scripture. Because last week we read some Proverbs. So this is just the second proverb out of the Septuagint. This is a modern translation. This is the New English translation, that is. So this is a better one than I tried to read from the first time I did this. But this is just good wisdom, guys. Again, whether you believe in the principle, the power, the personality of God the Father or not is less consequential than the truth here. And the truth here is that these ancient words of wisdom were held onto and taught with good reason. And when they weren't obeyed, societies fell apart. And the Israelites are a great example of that over and over again. So it says, "My son, if when you accept the sayings of my commandments, you hide it with yourself, your ear will be attentive to wisdom, and shall incline your heart to understanding. Yes, you shall incline it to the admission of your son. For if you call upon wisdom and raise your voice for the understanding, as well as seek perception with a loud voice, and if you seek it like silver and search for it like treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord, and you will find divine knowledge. Because the Lord gives wisdom, also from his presence comes knowledge and understanding. And he stores up salvation for those who succeed. He will shield their journey to guard the ways of righteous deeds, and he will protect the ways of the ones who revere him. Then you will understand righteousness and judgment, and you will make all good courses straight. For if wisdom comes to your mind and perception seems pleasing to your soul, good counsel will guard you, and holy insight will protect you, in order that you can rescue you from an evil way. And from a man who speaks nothing reliable, oh, those who abandon straight ways to walk in ways of darkness, who rejoice in evil, and are happy about evil perverseness, whose paths are crooked, and their course are bent, in order to remove you far from the straight way, and make you a stranger to a righteous opinion. My son, do not let bad counsel overtake you, that which forsakes the teachings of your youth, and has forgotten the divine covenant. For it has set her house near death, and its courses by Hades, with the shades. All those who walk in her will not come back." And there's a footnote there that shades means dead. All that walk with the dead. It says, "Nor will they seize straight paths, for they are not being seized by years of life. For if they were walking good paths, they would have found the smooth paths of righteousness. The kind will be inhabitants of the earth, and the innocents will be left in it, because the upright will encamp on the earth, and the holy will be left in it. The ways of the impious will perish from the earth, and the transgressor will be banished from it. And that, friends, is actually the promise of Christ's return, the resurrection, that end portion there. So this is pretty straightforward, right? It says, guard wisdom, guard what is right to your heart, and don't be led straight away. And it says, my son, it's talking to a younger man or a teen perhaps, or just any young person. And we know that there's a period often, at least in our modern world, where people go awry in their teens and spend much of their youth doing just ridiculous, stupid things. Most people think that their 20s is party time. I mean, I did most of that stupid stuff in high school. Not that I don't, go hang out with people or go to parties or whatever, but you know what I mean by, you know exactly what I mean by party. But people do. They just want to go out and binge drink and whatever else all the time during their 20s. For me, I mean, I was in the military, didn't really do that much then. And then I got out and I got married right away. So, yeah, I went out and would shoot pool and stuff, but not stuff like that. But yeah, you see it a lot. And, later on in life, I dated a lot of younger girls in my early 30s. On average, I was dating girls like 22 to 26 years old. So, you understand. I figured out pretty quick. Well, not pretty quick. It was probably took me 2 years to figure out. I probably should stay away from the anyone younger than 25. But it is what it is. But yeah, we see that, and we see kind of the ways of the evil person. Again, I could go through it deeply. I'll let you do that. I'm not going to opine on it forever. I just think it's good to read scripture and revel in its wisdom a little bit. So what do I have here? What do I have? Oh, let's see. I got a couple videos for you today. This is one I wanted to bring up because this was random. I caught last night after the stream. And I mean, it wasn't long after the stream. And I was talking about federal policing and the firearm shooting and the ATF agent that got arrested. And then I saw this video. So this randomly popped up on my YouTube feed as I went to make dinner. I turned on the Xbox and put YouTube up on the TV to listen to news or whatever. And I was like, oh, huh. And it says, I'm under investigation for buying diesel parts. Now, I could tell you what that meant right away. Because he says in his description that, I think it's in his description. Oh, maybe it's not here. It says in the very beginning, though, then, that he bought a bunch of filters.
Just make this video for you guys and address what's going on here. EPA comment right here. EPA. I lost all my diesel parts in a boating accident.
Oh. All right.
Hey, get off my lawn. What else? They had some questions. I guess I'm under some...
Is Fox 13...
Well, this is always best when you're doing a live show, right? Doesn't he want to show that I just closed that out? Well, you know what? We can move on to something else, and I can still get that up elsewhere. In any case, this guy who is a mechanic, and he has a hobby, bought a bunch of diesel parts, and he does a YouTube channel. And he took some filters apart. At the same time, he bought a sight, and he bought, or he looked at some cheap suppressors that he did some research on that don't even work. So because of those three things and buying a bunch of oil filters, the Homeland Security and local police came up to his house. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about, how they should be working in conjunction with local police. But Homeland Security and local police came to this man's house and essentially questioned him about why he did this and wanted to know what he was doing. wanted to know why he was buying all these parts, wanted to find out if he was a terrorist. Of course, my question would be, why are the feds, knowing what your internet history is, to come give you a little conversation without due process?
Wow, 132 comments.
Look at that.
I might as well go ahead and just make this video for you. China, diesel lives matter, LOL. I will not comply. Do now. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by today. A couple police officers showed up at the house. They had some questions. I guess I'm under some sort of heat with them for buying some parts for my diesel trucks. So, long story, so I'm going to explain that here in this video. I actually blurred out some of their faces just to protect their identity. And also, I just want to say that I do respect the police, law enforcement, special agents, things like that. I respect what they do, especially during these times. We will be getting into that explanation here in this video, so make sure you watch the video from start to finish because it may actually help you. I don't know if maybe you have the same hobby I do with, you know, diesel trucks, doing cool stuff like that. So, I don't know, maybe we might be able to learn something. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this thing right here, I want you guys to watch the beginning of this video because Earl's on the channel just as a funny joke, so chill out. If you don't have a sense of humor, go ahead and don't watch the video at all.
For the sake of time, not that this was not funny, sort of kind of is. I'm just going to skip ahead because it doesn't really serve the purposes. He's just making a joke that this guy is running away from the federal agents.
So I'm going to let you guys know right now, Homeland Security and a state police officer came to my house today and they had some questions. So first of all, I have nothing to hide whatsoever on this one right here, so this is good. And I'm 100% sure that they are watching this video because they know I have a YouTube channel, and that's fine. So I figured I'd explain this to you guys because I would hate to see you guys end up in this same position. I ordered some sights for a Super Soaker and a few other miscellaneous items.
You know, I don't know how many of you were just listening to me, but I did it again where I didn't have the video up. It's playing in the background if you're hearing it. So you guys need to help me out in chat. This is why I need Tank. Not that he's worth anything, but
for that, and I ordered a ton of diesel filters. Sure, a lot of you guys watched that YouTube video. If you haven't, make sure you guys check it out. A couple videos before this one right here. Much what happened was the wife and I, we installed brand new filters on our fast lift pump on the LBZ Duramax, and I ordered a ton of filters because I wanted to show you guys some of the differences. You know, Donaldson, good brand, and of course Caterpillar. Ordered a bunch of filters. So, and I have a lot of them in the garage. I ordered a lot of filters because, you know, even off camera, I do a lot of maintenance on other people's vehicles. If they want to drop it off, I'll fix them for them, stuff like that. So I order a lot of diesel parts. So I don't really have to post this video, but since it's truck related and it's sort of a heads up, especially for some of you DIYers that order parts in your garage. So this is what happened. The police knocked on the door, immediately greeted by a special agent from Homeland Security, all the way from Detroit, believe it or not. He gave me his business card, and that was pretty interesting. They drove all the way up here. He had this gigantic clipboard. This thing was huge. This clipboard had a bunch of papers in it, so I had no idea what was going on. I figured he was going to knock on the door and ask me who does burnouts on this road, or maybe there was a crime that may have happened in this area. He's just questioning neighbors, something like that. I had no idea that it was for me exactly. So he whipped out the clipboard and he basically said, so there's been a lot of AliExpress, eBay packages being dropped off here at this house. And then he was going on to say that I ordered a bunch of suppressors for a, I don't know how to say this without the YouTube video going down, but for we'll just say a Super Soaker. He really didn't want an explanation. He just wanted me to give them back to them. And I don't really know exactly what that means, but there's nothing for me to give back to them because it was something that I never purchased. I never purchased a suppressor. I know exactly what a suppressor is. So at this point, I'm a little confused. So I told the officer, look, I've never ordered a suppressor on the internet, on eBay, anywhere. I've never ordered that whatsoever. So he pulled out his clipboard and he showed me a record of things that I've purchased on the internet. And one being, I think there was 3 or 4 different items of diesel filters. And I saw that and I was like, oh, okay. So I'm in my front yard now. I'm standing in my garage right now. And I told the police officers, I said, hey, do you have a minute? Do you mind? I'll get my shoes on. We'll go around the corner and I'll show you.
In any case, this is good enough, guys. And yes, Val, it's all right. If you could hear it, I guess it works. I was looking at, I had minimized my OBS, and I was looking at the other internet links I have up on my other screen, and just, yeah, and being tired does not help, because I'm just not going to be focused today. So, yeah, go check out the full vid, though. Basically, the federal government, this was just published last summer, showed up with his house with a state trooper, which was good. This is what I was talking about yesterday with that ATF agent. He shouldn't have been operating alone. That shouldn't be happening. Now, often there's a task force, like the DEAs in my area. There's a joint task force. When I worked for the sheriff's department, I knew several guys that worked for the task force. Some of them were DEA. Some of them were sheriff's deputies. Some of them were city police. That's because the location I live at has a lot of drug traffic. Because of, or I did live out in Hagerstown, has major interstates running through it. But these guys right here, they saw his internet history. Something flagged it in the system, NSA, whatever it was, that he looked at a suppressor. He bought a new site for his AR. I don't know why he's afraid to say AR. He keeps calling it a super soaker. So he buys a new site, and then he buys a bunch of oil filters, and Homeland Security goes, oh, you know what? This guy's a terrorist making suppressors. This is the federal policing coming to you, ladies and gentlemen, to a neighborhood near you, because once the federal police come in, it would just be this nonstop. And once again, I would like to remind you all, if you aren't aware of basically what the elites will do, they are going to they're going to just have private security. They don't care, and they'll be the ones able to afford it. No one else is really going to be able to afford that. So, anyways, I got two other things for you real quick. Now, maybe you've seen this stuff before. Oh, I got Joshua calling me. Hopefully he's not telling me something came up. All right. Well, that's interesting. Well, Josh, if you show up in the chat or something, I mean, just let me know. Send me a text. But, yeah. I definitely am in the middle of streaming right now. In any case, guys, I found that just pretty
Bitcoin,
interesting that some random person, some internet YouTube guy who obviously is doing well and ordering bulk things and making channels where he actually cuts open an oil filter, and they of course can see that, but he did it for his YouTube channel, stuff like that, and they've done flagged him. I found this pretty interesting. I just happened to catch yesterday too. I know this has been around for a little bit, but I hadn't seen an ad for it yet. And given all the talk about crypto right now, I just thought I'd play it.
Bitcoin, the best money we've ever had. With a different kind of money comes a different kind of card. A metal card, powered by crypto. Every time you spend, you get 3% back instantly. Want more? We've got that too. Paired with a powerful and secure app that lets you manage your digital assets in one place. Have an issue? Connect with a real person 24/7. Don't like fees? Neither do we. Oh, one more thing. How about these perks?
Anyways, I brought this up. I don't even know if this was the ad that I saw, but it was a Visa ad, and it did start off as Bitcoin is the best money we have. This is really interesting, just from a financial perspective, an economic perspective, coming from a major credit card company, that they're actually advertising this and pushing this out. That they're, especially right now, and it's when I saw the ad, was yesterday. I was on my phone and I was on this channel on YouTube. And so I don't pay for YouTube Premium or anything, but my wife does for the music, I think it is, for the family. So my personal profile is under that. I'm not really into giving YouTube money, but obviously I send super chats on occasion to folks, so that is a transfer of wealth to them. But I'm not really into giving them money per se. But again, my wife, wants to do that, so fine, cool, whatever. I don't have to watch ads when I watch on my personal account. But I saw this come up and I was like, here we have Elon Musk trying to devalue Bitcoin, and then this morning, I guess I don't know if I've seen any. I don't think I've seen any other Tim Pool segments today. But this morning he put out a segment how the rich are trying to scam people into believing that crypto's not good or isn't the way or whatever. So it's really interesting. Not that I'm any sort of expert on this, but I'm kind of conflicted in that I believe that perhaps it might be a good way to hedge against inflation for a time. But the reality is that someone's got a finger on the button. And if you don't have any ability to have an electric or electronic transaction, these things are worthless to you. They're absolutely worthless. No worries, man. No worries. I just wanted to make sure you weren't calling that you were Joshua, that is. I wanted to make sure you were not calling because you needed to cancel or something, which is fine as well. Don't get me wrong. I understand things happen. But yeah, anyways, you guys have probably seen this before. I don't watch TV. So like if I watch the TV, it's like I'm watching like HBO Max or YouTube or something. Or Amazon Prime. So I'd not seen this commercial, but it was just a lot of things going on in the zeitgeist right now, up in the air, that make this really, really interesting. And you'll see, obviously, you all are probably very well aware of the inflation that will be occurring, that will continue to occur for quite a while. I believe that is a purposeful devaluation of the dollar, because it's all part of the money laundering scheme. And I'm going to show you this right here in a second. This was from a few days ago where Rand Paul was talking to basically the administrators of the Social Security Board. And if you weren't aware, the majority of the federal budget is entitlements. Now, the left always likes to point to military spending, which we could definitely cut in probably by getting a lot of our bases out of foreign nations. But I'm not really into cutting the military budget as far as equipment or troops, as long as we have them back here. And maybe we could be in a few places as launching points, like Hawaii or some of our places, some of the places in the Virgin Islands that we still basically own as territories, or Guam or something like that. But those are our territories. So, in any case, but, oh man, this is really bad today, guys. Just, if you weren't here at the beginning, I've had about 3.5 hours of sleep, so I'm going to try and pull it through. And tonight, I know I won't have to talk so much with Josh on, so it'll be all right. But, oh yeah, so the point is that the majority of our spending is entitlements, and those entitlements are mainly Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, right? So it is our communist socialistic programs that are the biggest things in federal spending, and they're absolutely out of control. Not only are they out of control, but there's no real oversight. Again, this goes back to the scaling problem, is once you scale up so far, there's no accountability. And we're at a point where the old school way of having the villagers come to the doorstep of the king is just not going to work. We have too much technology. The nation is too large. We're too fractured. Even amongst people who are like-minded, we often argue amongst each other over the stupidest things. And I mean that. I may disagree with one person or another over tactics or whatever. That's how it goes. Or long-term strategies. But in the end, we all know we want to beat the left. So we need to make that a priority and stop arguing over stupid things. Now, there is a portion of the people who are on the right, like the conservative Inc. type folks, right? As some call them, they're basically a step removed from the neocons, and they don't really know it or understand it because they've been brought up in this culture for so long of this is what American conservatism. Oh, we have to have this war power. We have to do this and that. But it's not American conservatism. That American conservatism was always anti-war. It's progressivism that was pro-war. And look at who led us into all of our wars up until, old Herbert Walker. And Herbert Walker brought us into that war specifically because he was a deep state neocon agent. Like, and we basically been playing out that administration ever since. I mean, Clinton wasn't really any different. These are all the same people. They've been running the government since that time period. And even, of course, under Reagan, they were running it. It's just they didn't have as much of a stranglehold quite then. They had more so under Carter. And, Ford didn't do much. Nixon was part of that team, man. He was I always say he's the first neocon president. You have to go all the way back to Eisenhower before we get a real legitimate, maybe JFK. I mean, they did kill him, but non-puppet president. So just understand this and understand that we do the things that we do with the foreign expenses and everything else to pay for all this, to pay for all these socialistic things as a big Ponzi scheme. We make the rest of the world use our money. And what happens is eventually, as everything inflates and our dollar crashes, the richest of the rich, they remain rich, liquidate all of their assets. Everything not all their assets, all of their debts. And so everything that they have a debt on, they can just pay pennies on the dollar for. And then it's helpful for you and I too, but as far as our day-to-day lives go, it's not good. It's not pretty at all. And then as America goes down, the rest of the world goes down. And as the rest of the world goes down through economic crash, and this happened, guys, in the Great Depression when we weren't even controlling the world economy then. So as America goes down, the rest of the world goes down, and there's going to be a lot of cries for new world leadership or a remodeling of the world leadership. If America is propped up in any way, shape, or form, I'm telling you now, it's going to be by China. And if not, the Chinese are just going to come in and take over. And that's going to change a lot of things in the world in a lot of ways. So this is when I always say, be prepared, get off out in the woods, do whatever, have your ammo, have your food, have your whatever. These things are bound to happen. I don't know when they'll happen, but as long as we keep staying on this course, they will happen. I can promise you that. And the goals for groups like Davos is 2030. So I would say by 2030, this is going to happen because that's their goal. By 2050, 2049, technically, is when China wants to be the world power. They're already there economically. This gets debated on the right as if they are not, or at least the old right, if you would, because they don't want to acknowledge that they basically built this up and propped up this government. That's the reality. And I covered this, a little while ago, made a series talking about 100-year plan or whatever. Not so in depth per se, but just, again, as usual, skimming the surface, giving you guys an idea in the direction that things is going. Them things and how they be going. So, anyways, enough of my ramblings. And let's watch this real quick. This was actually kind of refreshing that they didn't, go, no, is this guy? I don't know. Oh, blah, blah, blah. They actually answered questions, but, yeah.
If Congress were to pass the Duplication Scoring Act and you were requested by law to give a duplication score or information to the CBO so it can be reported with each bill, is that something you'd be physically capable of doing, your agency could do?
We could use some additional support for the Congress. As you know, we've been given vastly enhanced responsibilities under the pandemic relief packages that have been passed. But I think we can do it. We have the skilled people. We have the institutional knowledge across government and deep knowledge in programs and activities. So we can do it. We could use some support from the Congress to do it in a quick manner, Senator.
When you were talking about food regulation a few moments ago, I think you said let me see if I've got it right. 15 different agencies have what, 30 different standards
30 different laws. They're administered.
30 different laws.
30 different laws.
for its food regulation or food safety?
I think it's both. I have my expert, Mark Gaffigan, on the line. Mark, would you clarify for the senator, please?
Yeah, it's food safety and, of course, the regulations part of that.
Could you repeat that for me?
Could you speak up, Mark?
Yes, sir. It's food safety, but the regulations is also part of that.
Yeah, he's saying that the laws are for food safety, but they're implemented through regulations.
So safety regulations, but basically you're saying 15 different agencies, 30 different laws.
Right.
And it sounds like a confusing smorgasbord to try to figure this out.
Because this is how they launder the money. And again, I don't need to play this whole clip. You guys can go find it yourselves. You can go research it yourselves. It's what the government does. It's how they launder money. That's their business. That's what the Federal Reserve is. It's a money laundering scheme. So, and it's literally what a Ponzi scheme is, right? So here it says Social Security had 6.6 million listed at over 112 years of age, still active in the rolls. I'm pretty sure there aren't that many hundred or centurions in the United States. There's probably only a few hundred or a few thousand at best. Most people don't make it there, right? But where was that money going? Where was it funded to? Where was it funneled to? Who was getting it? And this is typical stuff, like back in the 90s when they were talking about $10,000 toilet seats and whatever else. This is, again, just par for the course. So I don't know what to tell you guys other than hold on to your butts because it's coming. It's coming. And the Federal Reserve Bank, they often trade back and forth with other folks, with other central banks that are basically owned by the same people all the time. They give out loans to other nations. And they're allowed to do that because they're not technically our bank. They're the bank in which we agree that they print money for us, and then we pay them interest on. In fact, 50%, approximately, of the national debt is owed to the interest to the Federal Reserve. So not only do they get to devalue our money, but we owe them for devaluing it. It's quite a scheme. Val, you'll go back and forth. Hey, like I said, it's fine. I get it. Don's got a much larger channel. Obviously, he's been doing this for a longer time. And, I freely admit, I know I've poached many of you from other channels. Not that is a strategy I was going for, but it's definitely a strategy that I employ because I want to make connections with people. And so I get on people's channels and I'm like, hey, you want to come on my show? And then there's cross viewership and whatever else. Next week, we're going to have Brother Augustine back, Michael Witkoff. So we're probably not going to do any memes because he's only got about an hour. So it'll probably be, or if we do memes, it'll be after he leaves. But yeah, that's all I got him on. That's a guy that's taught the Jay Dyer regularly. He's in touch with Roosh V. So these are kind of very high profile folks, right? And it's just what you got to do, man. You got to network. You got to hustle, right? You got to hustle to build things up. And nor do I ever expect or really want to have a channel that's like hundreds of thousands of subscribers or anything like that. And like beholden to so many things and whatever else. A lot of this is me venting. I hope to bring people in to make a voice, even if my voice were to be echoed eventually by someone else that perhaps was more eloquent or passionate or whatever, in speaking out these ideas. And, one of the reasons why we all listen to Don is because Don will tell you how it is. Now, he might not be right, but, he's right a good bit, and we tend to agree a good bit. So I might not be right either. Sometimes in a conversation, neither person is right. And there's some sort of meet in the middle position you have to go to, or someone else has to bring up a new idea, which happens all the time. So there is that. So anyways, guys, I wanted to get through at least one chapter to the vampire economy and try and finish up Basiat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read chapter 1 of the vampire economy and hope I don't stumble and stammer too much, or sorry, chapter 2 of the vampire economy, and hope I do not stumble and stammer too much on the 3.5 hours of sleep I got. And then we'll do a little Heaven on Earth, a little segment of that, and then we'll do as much of the law as I can do until I need to hunker down and get these memes done. All right. One of these days, I will buy myself a new mouse. A mouse that works appropriately. Look at this. I don't even know where it went. All right. Okay. Hey, Shelly. Thanks for showing up. So, chapter 2 of the vampire economy. Again, guys, I will probably only do this for this week. No video tomorrow unless I decide that I'm going to come in and just finish up Basiat tomorrow after I get back from Virginia. If I'm not exhausted from, whatever happens in the next 24 hours. Otherwise, we'll be back with it on Friday. But I do have some plans to talk about certain things on Friday specifically with some news, some things that have been up in the air, some articles written, and again, usually nothing you guys wouldn't necessarily know, but who knows? Who knows what you know? I don't know what you watch. I watch 100 million different things as far as I'm concerned. So I watch a lot of normie stuff. I watch a lot of not a normie stuff too. So there you go. In any case, Chapter 2, the destruction of the sanctity of private property. The government of totalitarian state would not be authoritarian if the courts still functioned independently. And that's one of the basic kind of tenets of the anarcho-capitalist is an independent court system. I don't know how you maintain that, though. I don't. The only thing, again, I can figure out is that we are very tribal, and we can only up that tribe so much. And that means that within that tribe, if things aren't working out, you're going to have to move out and move on to another one or something. But it's not going to be this thing where we keep drawing people in and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's how we lose accountability. There always has to be accountability. It's pretty good, man. I made a little matcha latte. It's pretty tasty. So Herr V is one of the largest landowners in eastern Prussia. He is a conservative old landowner who was once proud of being the free and independent master of a huge domain and who boasted of his patriarchal relationship with his employees. As an ardent German nationalist, he felt certain when Hitler came to power that the country had been saved from Bolshevists and the Jews. He never dreamed that the new regime would dare interfere with God-given rights far more than the social democratic government he had hated. Unable to grasp quickly enough the changes that were occurring, he did not conform to the ever-mounting request of the ruling party. Soon he was on bad terms with the provincial party secretary, whom he despised as an upstart. We all know that. We know those guys that they get in there because of cronyism or nepotism, and they're really cocky and not very good at what they do, right? The party leader tried to break his stubborn spirit by all manner of petty decrees and regulations, for instance, by ordering him to give lodging to SA men, brown shirts, and members of the Hitler Youth League, who annoyed him endlessly. There was no longer a Hindenburg who, as president of the Reich and supreme commander of the army, would listen to the complaints of his agrarian friends and intervene with the government on their behalf. Herr V learned only through bitter experience that there was no longer any court or official to protect him, and he began to fear that his estates might be expropriated. He visited his former banker, Herr Z, to whom he confessed, "I want to invest my liquid funds in a way which is safe, where they can't be touched by the state or the party. In the old days, I always refused to speculate, to buy stocks. Now I would not mind. However, I would like best to buy a farm in Southwest Africa." Oof. Well, if you did that, your ancestors probably are not doing too well right now, but whatever. Perhaps my next crop will be a failure, and I will be blamed, accused of sabotage, and replaced in the management of my estate by a party administrator. I want to be prepared for such a contingency and have a place to go should the party decide to take away my property. The banker was compelled to inform his landowner friend that there was no such way out. The state would not allow him to leave Germany with more than 10 marks. Southwest Africa was closed to him. He would have to stay where he was. Formerly numbered among the most independent and largest land proprietors in Germany, with estates that had been in his family for generations, Herr V today shared the despair of numerous German capitalists, none of whom can be sure that their property rights will be regarded as sacred by the state. Manufacturers in Germany were panic-stricken when they heard of the experience of some industrialists who were more or less expropriated by the state. These industrialists were visited by the state auditors who had strict orders to examine the balance sheets and all bookkeeping entries of the company or individual businessmen for the preceding 2, 3, or more years until some error or false entity was found. The slightest formal mistake was punished with tremendous penalties. A fine of millions of marks was imposed for a single bookkeeping error. Obviously, the examination of the books was simply a pretext for the partial expropriation of the private capitalist with a view to complete expropriation and seizure of the desired property later. The owner of the property was helpless, since under fascism there is no longer an independent judiciary that protects the property rights of private citizens against the state. The authoritarian state has made it a principle that private property is no longer sacred. Let me ask you folks in the chat, those of you listening right now, do you feel that your private property is sacred? Do you feel like at any point that the court would back your right, or the majority of your courts would back your right to private property? I don't remember all the details. Maybe some of you do, but the Bundy Ranch incident was a matter of a lawsuit that was going on for 20 or 30 years over a property dispute between government and individual. I ask you to question what kind of government you live in, as if you weren't aware. It's not like I don't say it regularly. Now, I agree differently than the left and their portrayal of the fascism here in the United States. I think it's a lot closer to what their fascism is. But what they see is the oligarchy, and they blame capitalism. What they don't understand is that if their system is implemented, it's going to be the same. Now, some of them do understand this. The ones at the top, the smart ones, the Patrice Cullors, completely understand this. I saw a video a few weeks old or whatever from Short Fat Otaku. Dev, whether you like him or not, does decent work, I think. And one of the things he was talking about was champagne socialism and Patrice Cullors doing the whole house bit. And for her, it was okay to do it because she was protecting her family. And her family were black people. Which made me wonder, if my family were black, had I married a black woman, would it be okay for me to be a Marxist and take care of my family like a capitalist? Just wondering. Or is Patrice Cullors just a person who's all about power? Well, I think you know what the answer is. Yeah, Val, no one who trusts our government. Do you trust Texas to do what's right? I mean, I know a lot of you are Texans here in the chat. I don't trust my governor to do what's right. I don't think he did what was right during the COVID lockdowns. Maryland right now has no mask restriction. West Virginia, which is really, really rural, still has one as far as I know. Now, most people don't listen to it, but that's another issue. The authoritarian state has made it a principle that private property is no longer sacred. And this is like the example I gave a few days ago. I don't recall when, probably last week. I was talking about an old buddy of mine from the military who started complaining about Trump and stuff and you know, the confiscation of property from people. And I'm like, dude, wake up. This isn't Trump. This is your party. They've been doing this forever. What are you talking about? Where do you think these laws came from? Like, I mean, they've always existed. The federal government always said it had the right to take property for the greater need of the people and with just compensation. But it's the left that does it more than anybody. And they're the ones with the national parks, and they're the ones that want to take the property of private individuals and nationalize them. So, I don't know. People don't think, though. They don't think anything through. The decree of February 28, 1933 nullified Article 153 of the Weimar Constitution, which guaranteed private property and restricted interference with private property in accordance with certain legally defined conditions. The concept of property has experienced a fundamental change. The individualistic conception of the state, a result of the liberal spirit, must give way to the conception of communal welfare precedes individual welfare. And then he says it there in German. Gemeinnutz gets vor, I don't know, Eigennutz. Sad, my German's terrible. Sehr schlecht. The government of totalitarian state would not be authoritarian if the courts still functioned independently as they do under liberal capitalism. The division of power between the executive or legislative branch, on the other hand, and the judicial branch, on the other hand, was formally a guaranteed to the owner of private property that his property rights would be protected even against his own government. Yes, because that was, as he stated above, under liberal capitalism. That is classical liberalism. The totalitarian state, in abolishing this separation of power, abolishes the sanctity of private property, which thereupon ceases to be a basic principle of society fundamental to state morality. Constitutionally, the businessman still enjoys guarantees of property rights. But what is the value of such constitutional guarantees without courts that dare to defy the omnipotent bureaucracy or to enforce laws that are out of date? The judge who had the temerity to attempt this would land not in a concentration camp, but in a lunatic asylum. A totalitarian state does not tolerate any second government, any challenge to the power of the all-wise dictator. Does any of this sound familiar, guys? Supposedly we're in a totalitarian state, but everyone challenged the dictator for 4 years. Okay, tards. Here, let me get you a pane of glass so you can lick it. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, the disparity that I have for this, like deep, not disparity as in difference, but I mean deep despair I have for this is insane. Like it I can't fathom how people just go about their lives and they post hoc justify everything. They change their beliefs on a dime. They just decide, well, this is what that group said, so this is right now, or Oh, that idea sounds kind of good. Oh, yeah, it must be a great idea. Oh, yeah, that appeals to my emotions. I don't get it. I don't operate in this sphere. It's not in my personality. It's not my nature. And I am more of an emotional guy. But this idea of like, oh, let me just join whatever the team says because the team, we know they're the good people. It's just mind blowing. Next week, I'm going to read, though, some stuff on this. I'm going to read a pretty good 16th century book on this about the obedience of the masses. Here, let's say. But what is the value of such constitutional guarantees without courts that dare to defy the omnipotent bureaucracy? Right, and this is the problem that we have right now. This is the argument of the author of the book, The Machiavellians. I've never read this, by the way, but Tank does recommend it. But I'm aware of the work. And it is that it doesn't matter what constitutions we hold. It only matters who is in charge and who is enforcing the law and who is creating the law. Because unless those people hold near and dear to that constitution, it means absolutely jack all. It's just a piece of paper with pretty words on it that makes sense to most folks, or a lot of folks, I should say, but a lot of others are too stupid to understand the gift that was given to them in that document. The judge who had the temerity to attempt this would land not in a concentration camp, but a lunatic asylum. A totalitarian state does not tolerate any second government, any challenge to the power of the all-wise dictator. Within the constitution of the Third Reich, any position independent of the will of the Führer no longer exists. The principle of the separation of powers is a thing of the past. Only the party has a privileged position. Fritz Neuenbrock, the financial editor of the basically the state newspaper. I'm not going to keep trying to pronounce that thing. It's the Volkaiser Beobacher. I'm just not in the habit of speaking German anymore, guys. It's literally, I really have not used it practically since I was up in Djibouti, like literally with the Luftwaffe. Me and the Luftwaffe were up in Djibouti. So there exists no law which binds the state. The state can do what it regards as necessary because it has the authority. The next stage of National Socialist economic policy consists of replacing capitalist laws by policy. What? The National Socialists wanted to replace capitalist laws? Huh? But I thought the Nazis were capitalists. This Nazi doctrine has nothing to do with the communism or socialism. It is offered to a new jurisdiction for the state use of private capital, and it is a means of placing drastic limitations upon private property rights in the national interest. National interests are not determined by laws, courts, or any legislative body. The decision is made mainly by the Nazi Party, or rather by its leader. That is, by the state bureaucracy. And by the way, folks, if you want to know why people would prop up Hitler who were within the party leadership, well, when Hitler goes away, someone gets to be in power. And all those guys had a lot of power and privilege, more so than the people in the rest of the countryside. And if those people got in trouble with one thing or another, it might be covered up, and as long as they were loyal to the party and did what the Führer wanted. This is how power works. It's like that picture of Stalin where they edited it to have the guy that was beside him on the boat out, which is now a meme. It's not the first time that happened. This is something Milan Kundera talks about. I always get this confused. Yugoslavia, I believe. I sometimes say Czechoslovakia when I'm talking about him, but I believe it's Yugoslavia. So, again, 3.5 hours of sleep, folks. Forgive me for my memory being crap today. National interests are not determined by laws, courts, or any legislative body. The decision is made mainly by the Nazi Party, or rather by its leaders, that is, the state bureaucracy. It is a principle that only party members shall occupy key positions in government and in all organizations where the state influences the distribution of jobs. They must be engaged whenever there is a choice between a party member and a non-party member. The carrying out of these essential parts of unwritten constitution is assured by the fact that the party members devoted to the leader and to the maintenance of the party's authority occupy all key positions and appointed offices, all new offices, that is. So this is interesting. Let's see. Can I get it highlighted? Which mouse is going to work? I'll play this game of get the right mouse, catch the right, which one's the right one for the task at hand. So the carrying out of this essential party of the unwritten constitution is assured. This is what we see right now. See, we have this is kind of conceptually, if you would. When I talk about when the Democrats, the oligarchs, the neocons, whoever it may be, the monoparty, the rhinos, the dinos, the neolibs, when they talk about democracy, they're talking about the oligarchy. And when they say the Constitution, they're talking about what they decided the Constitution said amongst themselves. And that's essentially the same thing here. And this was the largest reason why we got a Constitution that was written down, because in England, it wasn't really. It was a bunch of decisions in the courts and this and that over the years. And they were like, no, we're going to set this out like the Athenians did. We're going to write it down. We're going to write specifically how the government will operate. And we were supposed to stick to it. Let's see what the chat has to say here real quick. Because I know you guys kind of been talking here. Oh, yeah, it's jail time in Spain for defending your property, no doubt. Which means you have no property rights. It says your first infraction carries less than 2 years sentence if you don't go to jail. So the burglar could potentially go free before you. That's always encouraging, right? That is literally a tactic to demoralize you. That is all that is. I don't care what legislator said at some point that you have to, that they have to do this for the protection of the people. That is obviously nonsense. That's basically going, well, we just legalized home invasions. Let's go back to the pillaging days. Let's just go rape and murder everybody because the person in their house can't defend themselves. And I've been not in a lot of places in Spain because I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I've been in rural parts of Spain. They're out of the way for sure. I can't imagine the local police would be there quickly. And Sam, you would know better than I. Because like I said, I was there briefly. It's not like the Spanish economy is the best either. I think they're doing a bit better now, but I know they were down for a while. Joshua says, and of course, American government courts get to choose what an appropriate price for government company. Yeah, that's right. Not only do they get to choose what the appropriate price is, but they get to choose when the law applies and when it doesn't, and why it applies and why it doesn't. Just like, okay, so the thing I kind of am going to talk about, which maybe I shouldn't, but I'm going to just cover some articles about it, is I'm going to talk about some things being put out there in the media about the Republicans trying to end democracy and how they've been fighting more and more against democracy because of voter IDs. When that is the norm in the world. And basically they go, well, there was no evidence of this because the courts threw it out. The courts didn't see it or hear it. They didn't decide on it. And mind you, let's remember what the Supreme Court dissent had to say about it. Yeah, England and the UK still don't have a written, they never will. Look, conspiracy theory, guys, but the crown is part of the banking system. Duh. And so is the Vatican and all these other people. So, like, these are the people pulling the strings. And, of course, you have other people that work their way in, like Gates and whatever else. But, yeah. Let's see. Bars, no windows, houses. Last time I was in Spain, Dahlhawk says there was protests in the streets because the economy. It was interesting to say the least. Well, under Franco, after everything was, not everything, but some things were nationalized, they did have a pretty good economy. But, I mean, that's as long as you had the proper political opinions, because certain political opinions were illegal. So, I don't know. I mean, there's trade-offs with that. So how strict do you want to be with your laws? I definitely don't want commies in, but, you know, Franco did nationalize several industries, and I'm not about that either. Crap. See, look what happens. Oh, boy. Did anyone see my page number? Wait, here we go. Okay, I know I read this, right? Yeah, okay. I was right here. Never mind. Oh, I'm really good at this live stream stuff, aren't I, guys? Speaking of which, hey, if you like this, like, share, subscribe. You can donate over on DLive or on Entropy. Links are in the description, as well as the subscribe star. But more importantly, like, share, subscribe. Help me grow. Help me grow, because this show is high quality. Deserves all the patronage it can muster. This Nazi doctrine had nothing to do with communism or socialism. It offered a new justification for the state's use of private capital as a means of placing drastic limitations upon private property rights and national interests. National interests are not determined by laws or courts, but or any legislative body. The decision is made mainly by the Nazi Party, or rather by its leaders. That is the state bureaucracy. It is a principle that that only party members shall occupy key positions in the government. And in all organizations where the state influences the distribution of jobs, they must be engaged whenever there is a choice between party member and, did I not read this? They must be engaged whenever there's a choice between party member and non-party member. The carrying out of this essential part of the unwritten Constitution is assured by the fact the party members devoted to the leader and to the maintenance of the party's authority occupy all key positions and appoint all new officials. In the early days of the Nazi regime, some of the conservatives holding economic key posts, such as Dr. Halmar Schmidt? I don't know. Whatever. You guys can read. Some doctor. Former president of the Reichsbank and former minister of economics, and Dr. Kurt Schmidt. So that first one, schnacked. I like saying strudel properly. Strudel and schnitzel and spitzel. Spitzel's a good one to say. Anyways, the director of the largest German insurance company, and Dr. Skak's predecessor as Minister of Economy sought to restrain the growth of bureaucracy. These men upheld the traditional position of conservative capitalist economy and administration and efficacy in civil service, and they sought to win the leading Nazis at this point of view. In a speech to young bank clerks and students, it's just too confusing for my brain because I'm seeing the letters repeat. Even though I could spell it out, but Schatz openly attacked party careerists who sought a place in the new ruling caste and hoped to become a part of the privileged aristocracy with nothing to recommend them except their record as loyal party members, he declared. The aim of the National Socialist is an economic and social order where everybody, whoever is and whatever he did before, can obtain the highest post in the economy and in the state if he has the strength, the will, and the ability to do his job. This principle has been fully applied by the Reichsbank. At the Reichsbank, in contrast to conditions in the state office, many employees can rise from a low to a high position. He is not evaluated according to recommendations or good friends, nor according to other similar things which have nothing to do with his abilities, but he is judged merely by his fitness, his personal value, his knowledge, his performance. That never, ever, ever happens in reality. I mean, maybe. It sort of happens. We wouldn't have an entire incompetent leader class, middle management class, if this was the truth or reality of human nature. Meritocracy is ideal. It is not real. And I'm not saying that it's unrealistic to expect high standards in meritocracy, but you should expect nepotism and cronyism to be the motivating factors of things. Because it's just how people operate. Our base operating program is tribalistic. At the same time, however, the party leaders asserted their right to continue in control of patronage, of the distribution of state jobs and special privileges to trusted old party members. See, right there you go. Personally devoted to the Fuhrer. Ministerial Director Sommer, as spokesman for Rudolf Hess, Hitler's official representative, wrote in the Deutsch Jurist. And this is the other thing about German guys. They put like 5 words together. Juristein. So the Jury City Zeitung. Juristzeitung? Jurisdiction. Okay. Okay. May 21st, 1936. The influence of the party cannot be seen in laws, but in practice and personalities are the important factor. A large number of the ministries, at present all ministers, are party members. Some of them are also Reich leaders of the party. All Reichsstallhaters are party members, and most are also provincial leaders of the party. The Persian, whatever that says, are the direct leaders in their area. Other personal connections exist through the office of Landrat. Meaning, all this stuff, I don't know why they didn't transliterate this instead of leaving it in the original German, but whatever. Or it is transliterated. No, transliteration, whatever. I'm not even going to get into it. My brain's not there today, guys. Government chief of the district. But anyways, I was saying, I don't know why they used all the German words and didn't, make them more Englishified. Because I would assume Riemann wrote this originally in German. But maybe he didn't. Maybe he wrote it in English. Corresponding party members of the district, and finally, in general, all jobs of political importance are held by old, reliable party members. This does not mean that there are only party members in the government. And this also has a footnote, so let's read that real quick. The general meaning of this paragraph will be clear to the reader despite the obscurities of the manner in which the thought is phrased. The original German is written in Nazi idioms. Okay, the question I just had, right, that have become characteristic of German official documents in their eagerness to demonstrate that there has been a complete break with the past. The present rulers of Germany have almost intervened and invented a new tongue. Okay, so what he's showing is the Orwellian side of this, which is why there's a footnote there, and what I just said, why they didn't translate it over. He's trying to show that they're building a new language, which they did in the Soviet Union, They did in Maoist China. They did in, wokest America. So, again, par for the course, guys. Even important branches have many non-party members, but there are technical experts without freedom of decision rather than independent administrators. They must be particularly careful not to hurt the prestige of the Führer in the application of any law or instruction, because they are not subject to the rigid discipline of the party. They are always suspected of being unreliable. Consequently, they are inclined to be stricter than party members in adhering to the letter of the law or in refusing personal favors to a businessman. They have no party friends or in other key positions of the administration who can do anything for them for their friends. To a great extent, a person's status depends upon the personal opinions and impressions of the party secretary. Just like I said, people don't measure people on merit. Most people don't. Very few people do. Very few people actually do. It is exceedingly difficult to appeal from this authority. It can oust any person from his job and deprive him of his rights by simply declaring him unreliable. Hence, it is very important to remain on friendly terms with the party secretary, for his one word, reliable, has greater value than the highest honors any king may bestow on his favorites. And what he's really talking about is bureaucracy, and bureaucracy that requires a certain amount of nepotism. This is actually why I want to read In the Fed, because it gets into this as well. Because no matter what, these systems always delve into the same things or devolve into the same things, because these systems are all based on human nature. I mean, they're not based on human nature. They're like denying human nature completely, as Basiat pointed out. But we can look at these systems and how they work with human nature and how they always create corruption. And so again, I'm going to pick a few things to read next week, because I'm pretty sure we'll get through the law. And if not, I'll figure out a way to power through it, because it's 50 some odd pages. I should be able to get through it, guys. We got to be getting close there. I just need to bring you less of other things. Let's see here. In the administrative apparatus and the state police force, all key positions are occupied by individuals who have devoted, whose devotion has met the acid test. The party is the whip with which the leaders control the administration as well as the behavior of the citizens, be he the manager of the Steel Trust, a small shopkeeper of workers. The party has its own courts and judiciary because party members are not bound by official law in their activities. Again, does this sound familiar? Like the deep state system that we have now? How we have partisan judges who don't listen to the Constitution, despite taking an oath for the Constitution, but listen to their hearts, their progressive little hearts. The party has its own courts and judiciary because party members are not bound by official laws and their activities. They are permitted and indeed required to violate the laws in order to defend the prestige and authority of party leaders. And this is why the strongman's coming, guys. This is the same thing today. It has to break down. And you could say, but Bill, you're talking about when the Nazi party built up. Of course I am. But what do you think's going on right now in the United States with the Democrats, with the deep state? This kind of, the persecution, the political persecution they're doing right now to regular citizens is the kind of stuff that Obama was doing. So basically we had a little break. We had a little break of 4 years. And we're going back to business as usual. And business as usual is if you're on the right in any way, shape, or form, you are an other, you're a deplorable, and you ought to be excised from this nation. And what's crazy about that is, what's really crazy about that is that the progressives are essentially saying, you can't love America for what America once was or for what you believe it to be or what you wish it to be. You can only be an American and love America for what we want it to be. which isn't America. It's internationalism. It's globalism. Globo homo. Right? It's the destruction of the middle class. It's the oppression of those that have the least, that can afford the least. The people that live in the cities who are already on the plantation, they're already on the welfare train, they're already on the self-enslavement, and they can't afford to get off of it, or they can't get the jobs that they need. They don't have the education, or not intelligent enough. I don't know what it is. They don't have the work ethic. But the jobs aren't necessarily there because they need higher education or whatever else. The fathers aren't in the home. They don't have any moral grounding. They go join gangs. And the cycle perpetuates itself. I mean, I at one point, at any point, I just want somebody on the right in the federal government to stand up and say, every policy that you've implemented over the years in our cities has destroyed every ounce of our nation's power. Baltimore's desolate. Detroit is desolate. Chicago was bad before, but it's being gutted as we speak. New York, same thing. We are returning to the period of the 60s and 70s where crime was very, very high. Municipalities were not taking care of things, not even able to afford police or trash pickup or other things. This is why a movie like The Joker was important, because it was a reflection of a time we're going back into. And we didn't get more conservative all of a sudden, folks. No, we just addressed certain issues because they got so bad. We pretended like we got more conservative to some degree as the nation just expanded its global ties and power. Let me read this again. I think I'm getting close to the end of this chapter here. The party is the whip with which the leaders control the administration as well as the behavior of the citizen. To be he the manager of the steel trust, a small shopkeeper, or a worker. The party has its own courts and judiciary because party members are not bound by official laws in their activities. They are permitted and indeed required to violate the laws in order to defend the prestige and authority of the party leaders. The official union of Germany civil servants has a membership of 1,200,000, of whom 206,000 are party members. But 81% of the higher state officials in Prussia are members of the Nazi Party. To give it its full name, which he spells out here, we're not even going to do that. In the national government, all leaders are in the party and subject to its rigid discipline. Few exceptions are made to the rule that all important position in the administrative apparatus must be held by Nazis. The majority of those holding state jobs are also leaders of the NSDAP in their districts or communities. No one is to be appointed unless, in addition to the qualifications which fit him for this post, he gives a guarantee that he will always defend the National Socialist state without reservation. And I guarantee you, this is exactly what comes next. It's already happening. This is part of the cancel culture. We are seeing that with, don't have the right politics, lose your job, right? And this really all has to do with gatekeepers, right? This is all just gatekeeping. There's nothing more to it than that. Elites always want to gatekeep because they want to maintain their power and authority. They want to maintain their ability to puppeteer and meddle. I don't know what their motivations are because I don't think that way myself, but apparently, they get kicks out of it or something. Let me, I'm on page 34, so I got it this time. See how much left we got. Oh, is that? Hold on. Was this a time confusion? Did I see? This is how screwed up I am, guys. Did I start an hour early today? I did. I did. Ugh. Guys, this is what happens. I don't sleep. Start an hour early. That's okay, because I got stuff to do. So, all right. Well, let me get through this chapter then. It's only a couple more pages. And before I do that, let me just check in on chat. So, Joshua, you were right, dude. No. You were right about the time. I'd usually stream at 3. I don't know why I thought that now was the time. I didn't even realize I was streaming an hour early. That's what happens. Time's not something I have a great sense of always. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of the sleepings. Gotta have some sleeps. So Sam's talking about the spicy protests, just Antifa, no BLM. Well, are there even, like, I'm sure there are a few black folk in Spain, but I mean, are there really that many black folk in Spain? Okay, you guys are just chatting here. Holly says Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, New Zealand, and many others will be too small. Maybe another 2 small countries don't follow written constitutions. Canada didn't have a written constitution until 1982. Yeah, but you know, your prime minister just took your any sort of right to have firearms away, did he not? Via executive order. Granted, I don't know how much power the prime minister has over the president here, but ooh, Holly with the spice says, our society today is what the anti-suffrage movement said it would be in the 1800s. It's almost like people in power know that if conditions deteriorate, then people will grant more power to government and save. Right, exactly. Exactly. Well, just so you all know, I did stream an hour early today. I don't know why. I usually run off military time too, and yes, I started early, but that's good. It gives me more time. It gives me something to do. I might work out after I get done this or something. I'm not used to being up at 8:30 in the morning either. I'm just not, guys. You work nights for 13 years. See what your natural schedule is. Not that my natural schedule was ever being an early riser. All right. So let's continue and finish this up. No one is to be appointed unless, in addition to the qualifications which fit him for his post, he gives a guarantee that he will always defund the National Socialist state without reservation. The equivalent of this German rule is common to all totalitarian countries. In a totalitarian land where the will of the party is in effect, the unwritten constitution, the membership rolls are well guarded. Not everyone who declares himself a loyal supporter of Hitler can join. It is no ordinary party, nor is it a party wherein members can help to formulate policy and criticize the leader, or choose the leader. The authoritarian Nazi party makes the will of the leader the supreme law. The elite guards, SS men, and the brown shirts, the SA men, do no productive work. Because in Plato's Republic, guys, they're that enforcer class. There's only 3 classes. There's the ones that rule, the ones that enforce, and the ones that are the slaves. And it says, they do not work for the state. They work solely and exclusively for the leader. The existence of the party machine and its control of the government render hopeless any attempt of industrialists or bankers, though he may be the most important financial figure in the country, to get control of the executive power and to suspend the authority of the party leader. The party secretaries and those in leading positions jealously guard their authority so that no businessman, large or small, can gain an influence at their expense. The party machine as the vehicle of absolute power was and is too valuable an asset to let slip into other hands. At all costs, the vested power of the leadership must be preserved. The existence of a state within the state, the party, and the bureaucracy is a phenomenon of the post-war world. Yeah, that started for us because of the First World War too. Not the Second World War, but the first one also. Started a little bit before that, actually, but because of the consequences of the war, well, not really because of the consequences of the war, but because of the consequences of the war within the mindset of the government, I should say, and the progressive era coming up, we did this. The facts aren't quite the same in that the Weimar Republic came up for Germany. They were weakened. They had a very, very, what we would call liberal government, libertine, and people didn't like it. So strong man came. But we have a state within a state now, don't we? We literally use those words, deep state. We know what that means. It's the system that operates the system that's supposed to be operating. And the system that's supposed to be operating, it's far, far beyond dead. I mean, between court decisions and just the way the federal government has put laws and bureaucracy, laws on the book and bureaucracy all throughout the land, that Constitution is dead, folks. Has been since FDR. The moment that FDR said he would stack the courts was the moment the Constitution died, because the courts decided to reverse their decisions in his favor. And all we are living in are the echoes of the past. This republic died. Get that in mind. We are living in something else. It ain't democracy either. It's some form of oligarchy that's controlled by NGOs. The party and the government bureaucracy are above the law, but it must be pointed out that this special status of being above the law is reserved chiefly for the leadership. To create stability on which the leadership relies, there are strict laws regulating relationships among private businessmen. It is even conceivable that the businessmen are concerned might be successful in an appeal to the court against some regulation of the overzealous Nazi official, provided such a regulation were a gratuitous interference with the private property and had no bearing on the defense of the Nazi regime. However, court action has been very rare because most businessmen fear arousing the anger of Nazi officials who on some latter occasion might have opportunity to take revenge. And this is the same now. This is why no one stands up and sues. They can't. The courts uphold these unconstitutional laws, and you get people like Crowder right now suing YouTube, or James O'Keefe with the New York Times and stuff, but those guys got money. I know James got money. I mean, he doesn't himself personally, but his organization does, and that's how he sues, is through his organization. And, you know, I can tell you they spend a large, I think a quarter or a third of their budget on litigation, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I think James says this openly anyways. Pretty sure he does. As you all know, my wife used to work with them, so it's like a third of their budget. It's a big portion. It might be more than that even. As a rule, the relations between businessmen are still regulated by laws and customs, but customs have changed and modified law. The law has, in turn, been largely replaced by a vague conception of honor. Well, we don't even have that now, do we? We have just a vague conception of wokeness, of virtue. I mean, I just gotta say again, this is the kind of stuff. This is why you need to share this out. This is why you need to find people to listen to this stuff. They have no idea. I know many of you know it instinctually on some level. I know many of you have some knowledge about this. You see it, you understand it. But the deeper you get into like some literature on these things, you really understand and see the parallels. We don't live in an honor culture. We haven't in a long time. But what we're doing is we're replacing that honor culture with a virtue culture. And a virtue culture is not a culture that can stand, because then it's just always about who can outdo the next guy and how virtuous they are. And it's never about any sort of true altruistic charity. It's just virtue. It's like people tell me about the ice bucket challenge from years ago, raising awareness of ALS. And then I would kind of poo-poo on that as being a fad, and I thought it distracted from the what ALS was. And normally women would go, "Oh no, it raised so much awareness." I'm like, who doesn't know what ALS is? Maybe your average person doesn't, but anyone who's somewhat educated about diseases should know what that is. It's kind of a big deal. It would be like saying Alzheimer's or heart disease or prostate cancer or breast cancer. People don't know what these things are. Well, we need to have these campaigns to raise awareness. No, most of you did that thing because you did it out of obligation, guilt, obligation. By the way, it was pour a bucket over your head and donate $10 or just donate $100. How much more money would they got if people didn't pour the bucket on their head? I get the marketing strategy. I get the psychology behind it, but come on. People were doing it to be cool. I even remember a guy I know is, Phoenix City cop. It's a 4-time heavyweight kickboxing champ here in the U.S. Mike Malpez has a great book called Taming the Serpent. You all should read. In any case, he I remember him doing it and pouring the bucket over his head. And he goes, "I don't know how this raises money for ALS." Right. That's most people. They see it, it's a fad. Oh, look at this, it's a cool trend. That's the virtue society. Doing stuff because other people did, because you're a lemming. It is easier for a businessman to win a case in the German courts by appealing to National Socialist honor than by referring to the exact text of the law. This would lead to a complete anarchy in business affairs unless a businessman knew when the honor of a National Socialist required payment of a debt or the execution of a commercial transaction. Consequently, chambers of commerce and groups or estate organizations in the various trades have instituted courts of honor. A businessman who objects to another firm's concept of honor can apply to these courts, which settle commercial disputes. Officially, they are only maintaining national or group discipline. In reality, however, courts of honor are a kind of self-help organization for businessmen. Now, again, parallels aren't perfect, but I'm talking about courts of honor. When will we have courts of virtue, courts of wokeness? The party-controlled official courts are replaced by courts made up of businessmen. No businessman is officially compelled to submit his case to the court of honor or to accept its judgment, but the official trade organization urges its members to stick to certain rules which the group organization has established, except in the case where members have close relations with influential party functionaries who show little respect for the businessmen's courts. On the whole, there is a definite trend towards substituting for the centralized state jurisdiction courts composed of businessmen representing different trades. Businessmen feel the need for maintaining certain business rules and respect for property rights. Their self-help organizations are similar to the guild organizations of medieval times, which had their own courts for disciplining members, but at the time, the state power was weak. while today the authoritarian state is strong in its maintenance of a gigantic bureaucratic and military machine. The courts of honor, therefore, will always have to consider party interests so as not to arouse the anger of important figures in the party. Employers have been badly shocked by their new legal status, especially the conservatives who have held their property for generations and to whom the sanctity of private property has been a part of their religion. They might have excused previous violations of property rights as exceptional emergency measures, but they hoped that the buttressing of the state power through fascism would also bring about a strengthening of the sanctity of private property. They were independent and individualistic businessmen, not only economically, but politically and psychologically. For this reason, they are the most disappointed and unhappy over the new state of affairs and are likely to get into trouble with the party secretary or the Gestapo, the secret state police, for having grumbled incautiously or for not having shown enough devotion to the Fuhrer. And folks, that is the people. That is those today who are part of the Conservative Inc. That's who this will be. And I don't necessarily mean the voices, the speakers, the leaders out there, the Ben Shapiros or whatever else. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the people that go along with that don't have their eyes open to see more, that aren't seeing the bigger threat. They're not seeing the long game, if you would. They don't understand the battle. They don't understand the battlefield. They don't know the war that we are in. They are basically thinking that the system is okay, but right now, got a bad administration in. We're going to have to fix this and correct it. And what they don't understand is that this is infected everywhere across the United States, in county government and city government. It's in the states as well, but the states, they tend to go back and forth, and states have been turning red. So, their laws have been getting more and more red in the last few years. So we'll see how that goes. The capitalist under fascism has to be not merely a law-abiding citizen. He must be servile to the representatives of the state. He must not insist on rights and must not behave as if his private property rights were still sacred. He should be grateful to the Fuhrer that he still has private property. This state of affairs must lead to the final collapse of business morale and sound the death knell of the self-respect and self-reliance which mark the independent businessman under liberal capitalism. All this, there are parallels going on today in our world, not to mention the coup and the mandatory imposed lockdowns and the crazy restrictions that allowed small businesses that probably would have done a better job with, stopping spread than everyone going to Walmart or other big box stores, right? By the way, corruption, money, power against absolute power. We'll get to this. If I read any of this on Friday, I'll figure that out later. We'll get back to this. Now I've done lost my train of thought again. I was saying, by the way, on that last thought here of these systems coming up. Oh, and those big box stores, by the way, notice how all the big woke corporations, right, are part of that, part of this mindset of this virtue culture. CNN just fired a guy because he said something, he said Heil Hitler, basically, because he's an anti-Semite. And he's been working there for a while. And he's said stuff in the past. They finally got rid of him. They had no problem employing him, though, forever. Because the guy is like I think he's a Palestinian or something like that originally. So they just fired him because I guess someone called it to their attention. They don't care. They don't care. They have to now. It's different. All right, let's do... look at some chat real quick, and then we'll play some Heaven on Earth. Take a little break while you guys watch. Okay, Sam said the southern tip of Spain's right next to Africa. A trip, yeah, black folk in the same. Well, yeah, I mean, when I was in Crete, there was a girl from Africa I made out with there. She's actually really, really hot. Um, but yeah, so I guess there is that. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, like anytime I see pictures, videos, anything news of Spain, I never see any African folk. Um, when I was there, I didn't, but I was young. I was more interested in running around and getting drunk. Um, so I don't know, man. What else we got here? Not black folk in the same way as the U.S. More of the religious and peaceful grooming style. Yeah. Yeah, well, I would have figured the Muslims too, but obviously with Spain kicking the Moors out of the area quite a while ago, after their long occupation, that they wouldn't tolerate too much of that. They had a big illegal migration rush. Well, I did see that today. That just happened today, did it not, Sam? Or within the last day or two, I saw the news of that rushing of the border today, and I probably wouldn't have saw it had I not turned on. Was it Anything Goes? Is that what Paul Joseph Watson's calling his channel now, or whatever? Or does he have a new channel? There's a channel called Anything Goes, which is PJW. So so fun. Might consider trading some BLM folks living on the corpse of trading. Yeah, living on the corpse of Lady Liberty. Yeah, I mean we don't have liberty though, man. We haven't had liberty since they decided to change the definition of the Interstate Commerce Clause, and uh, the idea that the federal government could start regulating things. They just came out of thin air with. Just absolutely absurd. Breast cancer pinkwashing. Well, I said that. I mentioned it. I got to it. Same reason I refuse to wear a mask. Honor and principle. Orange shirt, anti-bullying. I haven't seen that, but I don't know. I don't like bullies either, but when I was growing up and like someone would like bully me, I basically put up with it until they like punched me in the nose or something, and then they got wrecked like every time. um, yeah, most of the times though, I remember one year I was in fourth or fifth grade. I don't even know what. Some kid was messing with these kids on the playground. I basically stood up and he like hit me. And I kind of laughed at him or something. And then he hit me again. And then the lunch lady came and put us against the wall. And I cried because I didn't do anything wrong. I stood up for the other kids. But, that's me. It's what I always do. I'm like little old Captain America. I'm just waiting to get my superhero serum so I can grow and be a big boy. Yep, Courts of Virtue is Chauvin. That's right, bud. Although the other case got brain not work. Who's the case that was let go the other day? In any case, the cops were found not guilty, but you guys probably know. Brain's just not there. I mean, I started the show an hour early and didn't even know it. So what do you think? 3.5 hours of sleep does the bill. 3.5 hours of interrupted sleep, by the way. Yeah, you're right. No Justice, No Peace is actually a terroristic threat, Sam. If we stay by our normal standards. Reparations for atrocities committed against them. What? Didn't the Moors run Spain for like 600 years or something? All right, that's about all I have on. Just trying to catch up on what you guys are saying. Nothing on D-Live. Nope. Nothing on Entropy. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to keep streaming since I'm early. I'm assuming that yes is to the 600-year remark. Yeah. Well, that's like the new. Since the fall of the Ottoman Empire, all of a sudden Muslims are the victims, when the reality is they've been the perpetrators all throughout history. And after they became wealthy and established, and then fell apart, then they could go, oh, well, we're just the victims to the white Western empires. Like all the woke scolding on the Crusades. I don't necessarily agree with the Crusades. I don't think Christians should be warring, but if there were any right to defend the homeland and take Christians out of oppressors' hands, that is from Muslims, because they didn't want to pay the tithe, or the tax or whatever it is, then yeah, because that's basically it. It's submit, convert, or pay the tax. Or in a lot of cases, if you were at the right age or whatever, well, they just make you a eunuch. So it's one of the reasons why there's not a lot of Africans, by the way, in the Middle East today. That is a true fact, because they sterilize most of their slaves. All right, guys, I'm going to go get some more tea. Play a segment of this, so good 10 minutes or so. We'll read some Basiat, and I guess I'll wrap up around 5. Good 3-hour stream, since I'm missing a stream tomorrow. That'll work. Happy little accident, as Bob Ross would say. Happy little trees. Happy little accident over here. Make a happy little cloud. I'm gonna play a little happy heaven on earth.
Talk of socialism's potential in the Third World came amid disappointments in Europe.
Nuh-uh.
In places like Great Britain, pensions and socialized medicine continued to enjoy broad support. But state planning had not delivered on its promise.
There's a tension between Britain in the 1960s. On the one hand, we have the image of the swinging 60s, the world of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the world of Carnaby Street. The problem was that the kind of creative energy that you saw going into music and clothing didn't go into most parts of the British economy.
And there was suddenly this color and efflorescence, but what it concealed was the fact that the economy was essentially dying. And we're living on the credit of the past, on old, declining, rusting industries like coal mining, shipbuilding, and steel. And nobody knows where the money's going to come from. So it was a kind of fool's paradise.
In 1971, the Times of London called the country's condition the British disease.
The problem with the welfare state was not that it wanted to distribute goods to the people of England. The problem was that a society bent on questions of distribution, bent on questions of consumption, was not a society that was going to deal with the underlying economic problems of how you produce enough, how you produce efficiently, how you compete in a global market. And that's the imbalance.
The world was changing, and it seemed that British industry simply couldn't keep up. Laws designed to protect British workers now prevented management from changing old practices. Workers demanded and won ever higher wages, even as productivity stagnated. In 1975, inflation hit 24%.
What essentially happened was that the wage settlements, as they became higher, pushed inflation higher. And that leads to an inflationary spiral, which was very difficult to control.
Since 1945, Labor and conservative governments alike had preserved Clement Attlee's social welfare programs and most of his nationalizations. But by the mid-1970s, a growing faction within the Conservative Party placed the blame squarely on the legacy of Attlee's government.
In their view, what basically happens in post-war Britain is that socialism, disruptive trade unions, and an expensive welfare state lead to a precipitous political and economic decline. What they see is a welfare state which created a dependency culture. It robbed people of initiative. It robbed people of responsibility. It disrupted the market. It made it impossible for the country to get anything really done.
Among the most outspoken of these conservatives was the party's new leader, Margaret Thatcher.
Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I presume this is to enable us to sweep Britain clean of socialism.
Mrs. Thatcher just couldn't bear the idea that British decline should be taken for granted. She rejected that with her guts. She thought Britain should be great. Searching around for what was wrong, she decided that what the economy needed was a dynamic shakeout, was to make people self-reliant again, and above all to break the power of the trade union movement.
In the summer of 1978, the Labour Party was in power and gearing up for a new general election.
The Labour government felt that what they really needed was to have a year of very, very low inflation. So they imposed a norm on trade unions, or on all workers, of a 5% increase in wages. In December of that year, the first test of the norm came in a strike or a dispute at Ford Motor Company. And Ford settled for, I believe, about 16%, which was way above a 5% norm. At that moment, the floodgates opened, and all sorts of workers who had pent-up demands for higher wages essentially put those demands to government.
Throughout December 1978 and January 1979, massive strikes shook the country. It would become known as the Winter of Discontent. Most of the striking workers were in the public sector, the nationalized services and industries, truck drivers, teachers, medical workers.
There were stories of ambulance drivers saying things like, yes, we know some people will die if we don't deliver them to the hospital, but we're going to strike anyway. There was a famous strike of grave diggers in Liverpool, which meant that the bodies piled up and were unburied. And there were similar strikes in other public services. Well, this kind of strike really massively erodes public support for strikes, for unions, and for a government that seems completely unable to do anything about it. In December 1978, the Labour government, despite lots of difficulties, still had a lead in the polls over Thatcher and the Conservatives. It was a tiny lead. It was 1 or 2%. By the end of February 1979, less than 3 months later, Thatcher was out in front with a 20% lead.
If Thatcher hadn't come along, the UK was screwed. Bottom line, it amazes me. I'm not saying she was perfect, but it amazes me what people say about how cruel and evil Margaret Thatcher was for essentially, which they're going to get into, stopping pensions and all kinds of stuff because the UK was going under, guys. It was going under. You cannot keep a system up like this of supporting everybody and people not working.
In Israel, too, socialism was losing some of its appeal. The founders of the kibbutz movement had believed that the communal way of life would embed itself ever more strongly over time. But as the years passed, the trend on the kibbutzim was away from collectivism.
זה התהליך שנמשך למעשה מההתחלה.
If in the beginning we got clothes once a week from the clothing storehouse, then later there were closets, and everyone had their own clothes at home. If at first all the food was in the dining hall, Then eventually everyone had an icebox. And then we started to keep things like beverages and fruit inside the house.
After Israeli statehood, the move toward a more private lifestyle accelerated. Members began to receive small cash allowances to spend as they wished.
What happened is what he just described. They started getting wealth. Statehood allowed that to some degree. Don't get me wrong, because having international recognition makes trade a lot easier. But they gained wealth, and as they gained wealth, people are like, oh, I don't need to rely on my neighbor for everything in this primitive tribal society.
The changes extended to families as well. The kibbutz children had lived and slept in a communal children's house. But by the early 1970s, some parents were beginning to have second thoughts.
The communal sleeping, this sounded very nice, but it was enormously frustrating for parents, particularly for mothers, who really felt they weren't getting enough of their children. They weren't being with them enough. They weren't seeing them enough. They weren't being able to give them enough love.
The children's houses slowly began to empty. Many of the kibbutzim took out loans to pay for adding on children's rooms to their parents' homes. In the midst of such internal change, the kibbutzim suffered a major blow from without. In May 1977, Menachem Begin carried a conservative government into power for the first time in Israel's history. The old Labor government was out, and with it went the subsidies, tax breaks, and contracts it had bestowed on the kibbutzim.
There was a time when we were wanted in Israel. Because we lived in the problematic areas. We produced the food. We were the heroes of this country. Eventually, the state let us know, hinted to us, we don't need you anymore. You are a place of residence like any other. Start being independent.
The kibbutzim were still socialist communities. But practical problems were forcing more and more compromises between the ideal and reality. Tanzania brought far greater disappointments. It was beginning to seem that Julius Nyereri's version of socialism was not as democratic as his supporters had hoped. In 1965...
Wait, Holly, listen to the wisdom of mothers. They never steer you wrong. Was it mothers who wanted women to vote? That's all I'm going to say. Just saying.
3 years after he was elected president, he amended the country's constitution to ban all political parties but his own. Nyerere was asked whether a one-party system included safeguards against the abuse of power.
To some extent, there are safeguards, but I have sufficient power under the Constitution to be a dictator. This is the dilemma of this movement. Sometimes you build the leader to the extent that at the end, when you think you have become free, the fellow has become so powerful you don't know what to do with him.
Nyerere was looking away from the West for a model of socialism more suited to a poor country like Tanzania. In 1965, he made his first visit to China.
See, in the year we went to China, Tanzania was in famine. And by that time, we were only 15 million people. We went to China with 1 billion, and everybody had their full stomach. 1 billion, think of it. They were making their own rails, and they were engineers, building their own houses, building their own roads. You see, And here we couldn't even make a bridge.
China began to take a special interest in Tanzania's development.
All right, Sam, appreciate it. Obviously, you can come check us out at 7 if you're still awake. And no time zone difference. But I should be here till 5 p.m. Eastern, whatever that is in Spain. I don't know if you're on GMT time or not. But otherwise, I'll see you somewhere in somebody's chat, if not my own.
Development. It would eventually contribute more than $2 billion in economic aid, more than it gave to any other country. As the friendship between the two countries deepened, Nyereri's vision of socialism seemed to veer more and more toward the Chinese model. And life in Tanzania began to revolve increasingly around Nyereri's single party.
After the one-party system was implemented, the country became more and more authoritarian. Party Youth Wing, for example, was established that would go around sort of imitating the Red Guards in China. The major newspapers were a party paper. The broadcast media was entirely under government control. The independent trade union movement was absorbed into the ruling party. Virtually all independent association life was either suppressed or brought under the control of the party.
In 1967, the country began to overhaul its schools, casting off the old Western system. Students would now learn practical trade skills and socialist ideology.
Practical education in science, physics, chemistry, and biology ceased. And they say this is now triumph, but as for us, it was the end of everything.
Folks, this is something that actually the socialists, the commies do really well. They actually do. And not perfectly well either, but they do quite well. And I know this because I'm studying a lot of sports science from the Soviet bloc end of things. And so what they do is they had a methodology where all their scientists had access to all of their data. There is no, because it's communistic, there's there are no intellectual property rights, and therefore they share everything openly. Whereas here in the United States, because of the competition, or anywhere in the West really, there might be open data in journals that you have to search for, but some coaches or trainers or whatever scientists might have their stuff kept to themselves. So that ability to like cross collaborate was pretty good. But then on top of that, what they would do is they would funnel their children into certain systems very quickly. Part of it was based on that party membership thing, like we were reading in the Vampire Economy, that always plays out importantly within these systems structures. But the other part is what kind of build do they have? There are certain things that they look for that at certain ages that make for good athletic bodies in certain sports. For instance, gymnasts tend to be smaller, not because working out when you're young stunts your growth, as I was always taught growing up, but because the mechanical leverage and advantage is in their favor by having shorter limbs. All right? So it's the same reason why a guy who has not very long arms, they're a lot shorter, they have better mechanical leverage for things like bench presses and stuff. And you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense because a longer lever, Bill, gives you better mechanical advantage. It does, depending on the type of lever that it is. Is it a first, second, or third class lever? So you have to understand how muscles work and stuff. So in any case, it depends. And you have to realize that our bodies, our muscles work on a series of levers. Interesting factoid. Did you know that no muscle in your body pushes, they only pull? So there you go. But in any case, so yeah, then they would funnel these kids through the system, and then say for the Olympics and all, once they got weeded out at like teenage level, those who would be going into the Olympics, they would put them in the special forces. They weren't really a special forces unit. They were just a special training unit for the Olympics. They're basically professional athletes, which the Olympic Commission got rid of the rules with all that some years ago because of that issue. But I mean, they're good at certain things, and if you want to talk about science and training those things, they are. We can look at China and what China's been doing right now. Over here, though, in the U.S., it'll never be that, because we're too caught up on these other stupid issues like identity politics, which mean very little of anything. It's just meant to demoralize. And so it's going to be hard to say what will actually happen, and if all this comes to fruition in the end. But if we look at things throughout South America, for instance, because man, boy, has that been a mess. We can maybe get some idea of where we would go, but it is hard to say, because we do all come from these very different cultures. So whereas the South Americans had their Spanish or Portuguese culture and mixed with the native culture, and Catholicism especially, there were just things there that were prone to set them up more for these ideologies. Whereas that American culture comes out of originally the spirit of English classical liberalism. And that's a very different thing, which is why I would say we have as many freedom fighters, people who are voicing up and saying no to this as we do. But just as many of us are speaking out, there are more than enough just idiots walking the streets that don't pay attention. The normies, if you would. This is why I'll never really rail against, some YouTubers that people don't like, who are bigger. I've had people I've talked to, so they told me I don't like Crowder. Crowder ain't perfect, but you know what he does? He brings normies in. He definitely is conservative ink, and I know he is buddies with Shapiro, but he ain't exactly of that whole ilk. You could say, well, maybe he's paid opposition. Okay, maybe. All right, dude. Well, are we going to play this game now where we're going to start fighting with people on the right? Like, let's not worry about that so much. Let's understand that if you want people to change their mind and open up their eyes and whatever, they have to be exposed to something. And my channel with, 169 subs I'm at right now, I think, unless I picked up a sub today, that ain't going to do it. Crowder with a million some odd subs, he's going to draw people in, and eventually they'll go down the rabbit hole to go elsewhere, right? Like, I found Don years ago. I hadn't seen him in a long time. I mean, he still had Peter on when I found him a while back, and I don't even remember how. I think someone mentioned him to me somewhere, and in a chat or in a forum, who knows? But I didn't really start watching him a lot until this past year, and that was toward the beginning of the year of 2020. But that's how these things go. First time I saw Yiz was over on Short Fat Otaku. So, like I said, that's what these things are for. And people you're too critical about allies, way too critical about allies. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys. We just have to understand that we all want to break off into our own little worlds or do whatever, that we don't want the government that we want now. And until we get to that point where we go, well, we're not going to argue over and start calling this person a sellout and a grifter or whatever else. We're not going to argue over the stupid stuff, the stupid minutia. Let's focus our efforts on where the problems really are. Anyways, I digress.
Christopher M. Tequila is the pastor of the Full Salvation Church in Dar es Salaam and the leader of a Tanzanian opposition party. He has been arrested more than 24 times for his political activity. His problems with the government began while he was in secondary school.
The all the teachers were from the West, and they taught us the sanctity of human life and dignity and all these things. Then all of a sudden, we were told that those people who were told to call as our brothers because they love democracy, human rights, now we should call them imperialists and all these things. I was confused.
The Tanzanian people did not embrace all aspects of Nyerere's socialist experiment. As much as he urged them, they simply were not moving to the Ujamaa villages. In 1973, Nyerere lost patience. He ordered all Tanzanians to relocate to the planned villages within 3 years. There were problems from the start.
During the execution of the program, there were mistakes. Sometimes a village could be taken to a place with no access of water, you see. Sometimes the people who performed the task were too brutal. At times it happened.
Imagine that, at times it happened. Times people were too brutal on
Lakini nilikuwa sina uhakika kusema kesho au kesho kutwa.
We were taken by surprise when the trucks came to relocate us.
Magari yashatuvamia, tukabebwa tukaletwa huko. Tumeziacha koroshi tu.
We had to leave the cashew nuts in the orchard just when they were ready for harvest.
Zaituni Abbasi's village was relocated to Gezalole in 1974. Not everyone wanted to go.
Some of them were happy to come here and are with us through to this day. But others tried to escape and run away. That's why that place over there is called the mango tree of the militia. It's because the militia had to be deployed at that mango tree to keep them under control and keep them from escaping.
A system so good that you have to have armed guards that keep people from escaping it. Man, doesn't that sound like utopia to you?
The villages were disastrous for food production. In 1970, Tanzania had produced enough surplus corn to export more than 500,000 tons a year. Just 4 years later, the country had to import nearly as much just to feed itself. Tanzania's government-owned industries were in no better shape. Typical was the massive Morogoro shoe factory. By the early 1980s, it operated at 4% of capacity. Conflict on Tanzania's border with Uganda and an international oil crisis struck a further blow to the economy.
After the war, things got tough. There was a shortage of a lot of things. I remember personally walking to Kenya to come back with toothpaste, bathing soap, and things like that. There was also a shortage of food. There had been a famine. So things were bad. Things were bad.
Then Sally Struthers came and ate all of the food that was left. I'm not sure how much longer this segment is. Okay. It's about out. I'm about ready to stop it because I don't want to go too far. I want to try and get through the law.
Julius Nyerere had succeeded in creating a nation. But socialism had failed to make it prosper.
For many in the West, mostly on the left side of the political spectrum, Third World socialism seemed an antidote to Soviet-style communism. But nations that took this path, like Tanzania, did not leap forward. In contrast, those that embraced private ownership and foreign trade, like Taiwan, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore, boomed. These so-called little tigers provided a vivid rebuttal to socialist rhetoric. Be sure to join us again for the concluding episode of Heaven on Earth, the rise and fall of socialism. For Think Tank, I'm Ben Wattenberg.
Old Ben Wattenberg. All right, guys, I'm going to write down the time real quick on that so I got it right. When we come back Friday, if I have time on Friday, maybe it'd be Monday. Chat is quiet. All right, well, let's just do the, let's get into the law here. So we are more than halfway done. There's no reason why I can't get through this. A lot of me, obviously, taking forever to get through anything that I would read here while I'm streaming is because I want to talk about it too. So I'll try to refrain from speaking too much about things, although, well, you know me, so we'll see how it goes. I'm going to say this guy's name's Basiat. That seems correct, in spelling at least. So, defense of paternal government. This is Basiat's The Law. Basiat carries this idea of the state as the source of all progress, even so far as to defend the Egyptians against the charge that they rejected wrestling and music. He said, how is it possible that these arts were invented by Trismegistus, who was allowed to have been chancellor to the Egyptian god Osiris? So, okay, this goes to Hermes Trismegistus, which is an occultist idea that they talk about Freemasonry. It gets tied back to ancient religious pantheons and pantheism, and essentially he's like the bearer of knowledge. So he also represents the Masonic idea of Lucifer, which is also where the words like the Enlightenment and the Illuminati come from. All of those things, right? So that's who Trismegistus is, if you were wondering by any chance. And again, among the Persians, Basiat claims that all comes from above. One of the first responsibilities of the prince was to encourage agriculture, just as there were offices established for the regulation of armies, just so were there offices for the direction of farm work. The Persian people were inspired with an overwhelming respect for royal authority. Right, but this is just regular serfdom, fiefdom, feudalism, where the king owns the land, you just get to till it and keep some. So these things become similar, and I'm sure that Basiat will dissect them here in a second. And according to Basiat, the Greek people, although exceedingly intelligent, had no sense of personal responsibility. Like dogs and horses, they themselves could not have invented the most simple games. The Greeks, naturally intelligent and courageous, had been early cultivated by the kings and settlers who had come from Egypt. From the Egyptian rulers, the Greek people had learned bodily exercises, foot races, and horses and chariot races. But the best thing that the Egyptians had taught the Greeks was to become docile and to permit themselves to be formed by the law for public good. The idea of passive mankind. It cannot be disputed that these classical theories, advanced by these latter-day teachers, writers, legislators, economists, and philosophers, held that everything came to the people from a source outside themselves. As another example, take Philion, archbishop, author, and instructor of the Duke of Burgundy. He was a witness to the power of Louis XIV. This, plus the fact that he was nurtured in the classical studies and the administration of antiquity, naturally caused, how do I even pronounce that last name? Fenelon to accept the idea that mankind should be passive, that the misfortunes and the prosperity, vices and virtues of the people are caused by the external influence exercised upon them by the law and the legislatures. Thus, in his utopian Salentum, he puts men with their own interests, faculties, desires, and possessions under the absolute discretion of the legislature. Whatever the issue may be, persons do not decide for themselves. The prince decides for them. The prince is depicted as the soul of this shapeless mass of people who form the nation. In the prince resides the thought, the foresight, all progress, and principle of all organization. Thus, all responsibility rests in him. The whole of the 10th book of the Philion's Telemachus proves this. I refer the reader to it, the Telemachus, whatever, and content myself with quoting at random from this celebrated work, to which in every other respect I am first to pay homage. So he's addressing here other writers of socialism that you've probably never heard of, right? Or at least writers of central authoritarianism, of the arguments of the day. There's a reason why you've probably never heard of these people. It's because their ideas were not won out. Who's the person that we know of? Who is the father of socialism today? Well, it's Marx. But these ideas go way further back than Marx. That's the bottom line. And the reality is that it's simply a matter of freedom or servitude. Obviously, if you are a prince and you believe that you are the head or the soul, the animating force of the people, and without you, they could not subside, then you probably have some things backwards there. Because the reality is that the people are the ones who prop up the prince. And most people are too dumb to understand this. Nietzsche understood this. Now, Nietzsche was quite arrogant in himself and quite snobbish as well. But he understood what he deemed master-slave morality. And probably not one of my best videos, but certainly one of the first videos I did on OBS here. I did a little slideshow and talked about this. Master-slave morality is important because I often get it confused and say master-slave mentality because it's the same thing. It's how people think of themselves and what they want. And Nietzsche points very clearly to there are people who make their way in lives and act like kings or whatever, or act like they're in charge. And then there are people who just want to be taken care of. And this is something that needs to be understood because this is a reflection of a truth in human nature. That we have different personalities, and it's reflected over and over again throughout philosophical writings. So we have to understand this. Socialists do not. They don't understand that some people are just lazy. Some people want to be taken care of, and some people want to do for themselves. Now, I would say people who want to be taken care of should be left to their own devices like anyone else and let nature take its course, and then they can change their mind. But in a truly free society, they could go have their little communist utopia within our society somehow, right? It's possible. But it doesn't work the other way around. Not really. And they always have to come for you because their whole mentality is based on covetousness. So of course they're going to come after you. Like I hope wherever you guys, those of you who are serious about moving, serious about getting to like heavily like forested or rural areas, I hope you're finding a place that you believe provides strategic position as well. Don't just buy land for the sake of buying land. You know, research your area. Make sure you have water supplies. Make sure you have soil, lumber, all those things that you might need on your land. One of the great things here in West Virginia is any land I buy, I get all rights to. That is mineral and lumber rights. So, need some extra cash. Maybe I can have some of that logged off, whatever. But more importantly, worst comes to worst, I have my own wood supply that's pretty much self-replenishing. So let's continue here. Socialists ignore reason and fact. No, they don't. Never. Socialists never ignore. They're the most logical people ever. Look at Voldemort and his neck-beardedness. He's supporting Hamas right now, by the way, through a kid's fund that he doesn't understand. But sure, man, support them terrorists. I'm no Zionist either, folks. I'm just saying. Hamas is definitely not a up-and-up organization. In any case, with the amazing credulity, which is typical of the classicist, he ignores the authority of reason and fact when he attributes the general happiness of the Egyptians not to their own wisdom, but to the wisdom of their kings. I might take an issue with this. We'll see what he's saying. We cannot turn our eyes to either shore without seeing rich towns and country estates, most agreeably located, fields never fouled, covered with golden crops every year, meadows full of flocks, workers bending under the weight of the fruit which the earth lavished upon its cultivators, shepherds who made the echoes resound with the soft note from their pipes and flutes. Happy, say Mentor, is the people governed by a wise king. Later mention desired that I observe the contentment and abundance which covered all Egypt, where 22,000 cities could be counted. He admired the good police regulations in the cities, the justice rendered in favor of the poor against the rich, the sound education of the children in obedience, labor, sobriety, and the love of the arts and letters, the exactness with which all religious ceremonies were performed, the unselfishness, the high regard for honor, the faithfulness to men, the fear of gods which every father taught his children. He never stopped admiring the prosperity of the country. Happy, said he, is the people ruled by a wise king in such a manner. So socialists want a regiment people. That is true. They do want, think about the Red Guard, think about the Stasi or any of there's always something there. They do want a regiment of people. They think of people like machines, literally, as some sort of automaton. And one thing that is being confused here by the author that Basiat is addressing is that ancient peoples didn't necessarily think like that, but generally speaking, what they thought was if you were conquered, you were a lesser person. Generally speaking. Because otherwise, your people, your tribe, your whatever, wouldn't have been able to be conquered. You must be inferior. So it's simple, but it is it was largely accepted. It says Fennell's Italy on Crete is even more alluring. Mentor is made to say, all that you see is the wonderful island results from the laws of Minos. The education which he ordered from the children makes their bodies strong and robust. From the very beginning, one accustoms the children to a life of frugality and labor, because one assumes that all pleasures of the sense weaken both body and mind. Thus, one allows them no pleasure except that of becoming invincible by virtue, of acquiring glory. Here one punishes three vices that go unpunished among other people: ingratitude, hypocrisy, and greed. There is no need to punish persons for prompt and dissipation, for they are unknown in Crete. No costly furniture, no magnificent clothing, no delicious feast, no gilded place are permitted. Thus does Mentor prepare his student to mold and to manipulate, doubtless with the best of intentions, the people of Ithaca? And to convince the student of the wisdom of these ideas, Mentor recites to him the example of Salentum. It is from this sort of philosophy that we receive our first political ideas. We are taught to treat persons much as an instructor in agricultural teachings, farmings, to prepare and tend the soil. So here he's recounting, the writings in the works of ancient Greeks. Again, things that most of you aren't familiar with because we don't use this type of education anymore. We don't read Greek and Latin, or in some cases, even Hebrew still. These are the basis, though, of our society, its origins, why we are here. Why did we stop teaching them? Well, I'll tell you why. Because when you don't know them, you don't know what you're guarding, and you get caught up into the 1619 Project, the Lincoln Project, whatever else, and all the stupid wokeness, and all the Columbus was a slaver, and whatever. Columbus never enslaved anybody. The only things that we really have written about his times here were by his replacement. And if you read what he did, what he talked about, the only people he really punished that I'm aware of were his own men. But yet this is in the zeitgeist. People know this as fact. They know it as fact that Columbus enslaved people and he did this and that and he was brutal to the Indians and he chopped their hands off and he did all these things. They know it as fact, and it is absolute fiction. Hey, Dahari, afternoon, folks. Got out of prison early, yeah. Well, if you work in a prison, bud, then that goes the same. And I know that feeling. I never worked in a prison, but in a jail, not, it's kind of different, but basically the same. I've been streaming forever, man. I didn't realize I started streaming an hour early because I got no sleep. So, whatever. I'll be back on at 7. A famous name and an evil idea. Now listen to the great Montesquieu on the same subject. So Montesquieu is someone I believe I want to read to you all. That is Baron. I often say Lord Montesquieu, but it's Baron de Montesquieu. His work, the Spirit of the Law, which is largely where we get our system of government from, federally at least. People start talking about Locke and all, and they don't understand what Montesquieu's contribution was to this. To maintain the spirit of commerce, it is necessary that all the laws must favor it. These laws, by proportionately dividing up the fortunes as they are made in commerce, should provide every poor citizen with sufficiently easy circumstances to enable himself to work like the others. These same laws should put out every rich citizen in the same lowered circumstance as to force himself to the work in order to keep or to gain. And then Basiat says, thus the laws are to dispose of all fortunes. This is what the Greeks thought. This is not what Basiat thought. And again, this is not the whole of Montesquieu's work. It's just a part of it, right? It's I have a PDF copy I could bring out. It's at least 700 pages. So, I mean, I'm talking about a pretty thick book. Thus the laws are to dispose of all fortunes, right? Although real equality is the soul of the state in a democracy, yet this is so difficult to establish that an extreme precision in this manner would not always be desirable. It is sufficient that there be established a census to reduce or fix these differences in wealth within a certain limit. After this is done, it remains for specific laws to equalize inequality by imposing burdens upon the rich and granting relief to the poor. Here again, we find the idea of equalizing fortunes by law, by force, which, if you haven't been watching any of this, I know, Dahari, you've been... I thought I'd never work in a jail either, but when you're out of the Marine Corps and you work in a photo lab and you're trying to go to school and you got a newborn baby or coming along and you want insurance and you're making $20,000 a year and you got 2 stepkids, you do things. You do things that you think are temporary that end up becoming quite a while. Anyways, so Basiat's whole thing is right, that to use the law to distribute wealth is legal plunder. So, in Greece, there was 2 kinds of republics. One, Sparta, was military. The other, Athens, was commercial. In the former, it was desired that the citizens be idle. In the latter, love of labor was encouraged. Note the marvelous genius of these legislators. By debasing all established customs, by mixing the usual concepts of all virtues, they knew in advance that the world would admire their wisdom. Lycurgus gave stability to a city of Sparta by combining petty thievery with the soul of justice, by combining the most complete bondage with the most extreme liberty, by combining the most atrocious beliefs with the greatest moderation. He appeared to deprive his city of all its resources, arts, commerce, money, and defense. In Sparta, ambition went without the hope of material reward. Natural affection found no outlet because a man was neither son, husband, nor father. Even chastity was no longer considered becoming. By this road, he led Sparta on the greatness and glory. They also let their women vote, which Aristotle said is why they fell. So just want to throw it out there. Go read on politics. This boldness, which was to be found in the institutions of Greece, has been repeated in the midst of the degeneracy and corruption of our modern times. As occasionally honest legislators has molded a people in whom integrity appears as natural as courage in the Spartans. Mr. William Penn, for example, is a true Lycurgus. Even though Mr. Penn had peace as his objectivity, while Lycurgus, Mr. L, because I'm going to keep stumbling over that, had war on his objective, they resemble each other in that their moral prestige over free men allowed them to overcome prejudices, to subdue passions, and to lead their respective people into new paths. The contrary of Paraguay's furnishes us with another example of the people who, for their own good, are molded by their legislatures. Now, it is true that if one considers the sheer pleasure of commanding to be the greatest joy in life, he contemplates a crime against society. It will, however, always be a noble idea to govern men in a manner that will make them happier. Those who desire to establish similar institutions must do as follows. Establish common ownership of property, as in the Republic of Plato. Revere the gods as Plato commanded. Prevent foreigners from mingling with people in order to preserve the customs. Well, that's based. So, let the state, instead of the citizens, establish commerce. The legislature should supply arts instead of luxuries. They should satisfy needs instead of desire. Sounds a lot like it was quite fascistic, does it not? And again, that's not the whole. Montesquieu brought about the idea of the separation of powers and all these other things. So, but I'm pretty sure that's who he's referring to. He's very influential during the Enlightenment for the thought of classical liberalism. Let's look at the translator's note. What was then known as Paraguay was a much larger area than it is today. It was colonized by the Jesuits, who settled the Indians into villages and generally saved them from further brutalities by there's 2 words there I can't see. Nope. By the avoid conquer. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. The avoid conquerors by avoiding the conquerors. Let's see here. I got Val laughing at something. They was woke, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they was woke, right? All right, guys, I got about 12, 13 more minutes of this, so it got us down the line there. But I gotta get some food. I gotta get some beer for the show. Gotta get my memes sorted. Getting close there. Joshua, I hope I do not disappoint you tonight, bud. I hope the memes are lit. Tonight will be a pretty relaxed show. At least on my end of things, I hope. I really hope that Josh has a lot of inspiring words for you all. So if you all are available, come over at 7 p.m. to the Ends Justify the Memes. Apparently, Don's going to be streaming at the same time with a fella who's kind of important to the state of Texas. So, if you guys don't catch it, that's cool. Come back and watch it later. Give me that thumbs up. A frightful idea. Those who are subject to vulgar infractions may exclaim. Montesquieu has said this. So it's magnificent and sublime. As for me, I have the courage of my own opinion. I say, what? You have the nerve to call that fine? It is frightful. It's abominable. These random selections from the writings of Montesquieu show that he considers persons, liberties, properties, mankind itself to be nothing but materials for legislators to exercise their wisdom upon. And then he says the leader of the Democrats. Now let's examine Rousseau on the subject. Yeah, Rousseau's the guy. That blank slate thing, man, they can't get over it. It's completely been debunked in the last 40, well, how old am I? I'm 40. So 50 years of social science. Blank slate theory has been utterly destroyed. There is no scientific basis for it whatsoever. We know that we are born with personalities. Personalities are highly heritable. In some cases, some personality traits up to 60% heritable, meaning the environment has a lesser impact. It depends on what the trait is. And it depends on how strong of an influence your environment is, guys. Obviously, your personality is going to be, if you're very open like me and a little bit extroverted, although I'm actually an introvert. I need time by myself to gain energy. But if I can be very extroverted or come off that way, if I'm like that as a little kid, but then I get beat down all the time by somebody or society, and I get fearful to speak out, that's a change. That's an environmental change in personality, right? So it depends on how strong that stimulus is. But that genetic stimulus, that's already there. It's already pretty much set. And perhaps there might be some things with nutrition or whatever that might be influential that we don't know about yet. But aside from that, the bottom line is we are not blank slates. Steven Pinker wrote a pretty detailed book on this. It's not the end-all be-all, but he goes through all of the leftist-type arguments, and Pinker is a lefty. I don't think he's a far lefty or anything, but he's a lefty for sure. Now, let us examine Rousseau on the subject. This writer on public affairs is the supreme authority of the Democrats. And although he bases the social structure upon the will of the people, he has, to a greater extent than anyone else, completely accepted the theory of total inertness of mankind in the presence of the legislature. And again, if you guys haven't been catching it, I know, Dahar, you haven't necessarily been here. If you've never read Basiat's The Law, I'm seeing you have something to comment. I remember studying some of this in college. It was interesting. Yeah. Well, that's why I've been going over this, man. I've been going over this because this is the stuff that's my education. Now, for this stuff, I'm primarily autodidactic, right? I'm self-educated. But my college education's all over the place. So, and I only have an associate's degree. So, but that's me. but basically, I started off in liberal arts as far as college education, and focused on history and education for a little bit, and then I switched over to just what what the hell do they call it? Basically, social work type stuff. Not because I wanted to do that, but because I really like humanities. So, and then finally, I was like, no, screw all this. This stuff's really corrupt. It's completely different than what real classical education is, which is evidenced by my sociology books and the crazy things that they say. Which, by the way, most of the studies that are in those books can't be replicated. It's pretty funny how that works. Yet they're held up as the truth. Anyways, so Rousseau states here, if it is true that a great prince is rare, then it is not true that a great legislator is even more rare. The prince has only to follow the pattern that the legislator creates. The legislator is the mechanic who invents the machine. The prince is merely the workman who sets it into motion. And Basiat says, and what part do persons play in all this? They are merely the machines that are set into motion. In fact, are they not merely considered to be the raw materials of which the machine is made? And this, guys, again, this is the rub. Because you can't really believe in no private property unless you believe that human beings can't own themselves. Right? Because if there's no private property, then you can't even own yourself. You have to be part of the collective. Let's go back to the Republic, to Plato. What did he want? He didn't want mothers and fathers. He wanted free love, free sex with everybody. I can go back to an early old Bolshevik, that is the Bolsheviks that took over the Russian government. Yevgeny Zamyatin, in his sci-fi dystopian novel, We, which was a criticism of Taylorism and Bolshevism. Guess what they did? Free love, baby. Everybody gets to share each other. What's going on now with the trannies? Trannies want you to have free love with them. And you're just a bigot. You're just a bigot if you don't suck their wang. What does this world come to, man? I mean, I know what it is. It is straight out of the pits of hell. They don't want you to have a personal sovereignty in any way, shape, or form. They believe in themselves as gods, as stated earlier in this document. I read that yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't know when it was. Well, today's Wednesday, so it couldn't have been more than 2 days. Thus, the same relationship exists between the legislature and the prince as exists between the agricultural expert and the farmer. And the relationship between the prince and his subjects is the same as that between the farmer and his land. How high above mankind, then, has this writer of public affairs been placed? Rousseau rules over legislators themselves and teaches them their trade in these imperious times, or terms. Would you give stability to the state? Then bring the extremes as closely together as possible. Tolerate neither wealthy persons nor beggars. If the soil is poor or barren, or the country too small for its inhabitants, then turn to industry and arts and trade these products for the foods that you need on a fertile soil. If you are short of inhabitants, devote all your attention to agriculture, because this multiplies people, banishes the arts, because they only serve to depopulate the nation. Rousseau is freaking dumb, guys. I'm reading this. I'm thinking about the video we just watched, Heaven on Earth, and what they were talking about with Tanzania, and I'm like, yeah. But this is the stuff. This is the same with the Malthusians. When you start talking to people about the global warming and the overpopulation. Thomas Malthus was a fool who never could think beyond the conception that maybe new technology and innovations would get us out of the problem of resources, or perhaps there were a lot more resources than he perceived on the earth. If you have extensive and accessible coastlines, then cover the sea with merchant ships. You will have a brilliant but short existence. If your seas wash only inaccessible cliffs, let the people be barbarous and eat fish. They'll live more quietly, perhaps better, and most certainly they will live more happy. In short, in addition to the maxims that are common to all, every people has its own particular circumstance, and this fact in itself will cause legislation appropriate to the circumstances. This is the reason why the Hebrews formerly, and more recently the Arabs, had religion as a principal objective. The objective of the Athenians was literature, of Carthage and Tyre, commerce. Tyre was destroyed by God, so why would he bring that up? But whatever. Of roads, naval affairs, of Sparta, war, and of Rome, virtue. I don't know about that. The author of the Spirits of the Laws, that's Montesquieu, has shown by what art the legislature should direct his institutions towards each of these objectives. But suppose that the legislator makes his proper objective and acts on a principle different from the indicated by the nature of things. Suppose that the selected principle sometimes creates slavery, and sometimes liberty, sometimes wealth, and sometimes population, sometimes peace, and sometimes conquest. This confusion of objective will slowly enfeeble the law and impair the Constitution. The state will be subjected to ceaseless agitation until it is destroyed or changed, and invisible nature regains her empire. Nature regains her empire. That's, again, Rousseau, Malthus. This is how these people think. They're stuck in this mindset of this humanistic enlightenment. See, enlightenment wasn't purely humanistic, folks. There is a humanistic side to it. But that is the side that they're focused on. And that humanistic enlightenment side is all about returning to, well, look, man, Hammer City. Let's look it up real quick. You guys know about the Hammer City plan, right? Where you get to live in this little you get to live in your little slum town out in the Colorado wild. This is not going to be a fun time for these people. I know there's a lot of granola folks out in Colorado, but this is not going to go well. But then again, it's an anti-colonizer city, so whatever. Maybe it'll be all black folks, and they'll have their utopia, and maybe it'll all be all BIPOCs or whatever they're called these days. All right, see you, Val. All right, let me finish this up here. What is it? It's 5 o'clock now. All right, so get to the bottom of this. But if nature is sufficiently invincible to regain its empire, why does not Rousseau admit that it did not need the legislature to gain it in the first place? Why did he not see that men, by obeying their own instincts, would turn to farming on fertile soil and to commerce on an extensive and easy access coast, without the interference of Lycurgus, whatever, the Spartan king, or a Solon being the lawgiver of the Greeks. Solon's really the guy, as far as Western history goes, that spells out this idea of balancing who's too rich and who's too poor. No, he's not necessarily the only one, because Plato talked about it too, but Solon came before him. So, who might easily, anyways, Solon or a Rousseau who might easily be mistaken. So, yeah, that's a good place to stop. I think. Hold on. I'll do one more. I'll do one more little section here. Getting through this is ideal this week, and since I probably won't be able to stream tomorrow, like, guys, if you see me streaming tomorrow, it may happen, but it's going to be at a random time. I can tell you, it's probably going to be later in the evening if I do. I'm not planning on it, but if I get home and I'm like, I might as well just go ahead and stream. So you can keep an eye out, check in if you want, but I would assume it'd be after like 4 or 5 if I do. Otherwise, I will be back for certain on Friday. I'll schedule that as soon as I close out here, and we'll read like chapter 3, the vampire economy. I probably won't stay with the vampire economy after that. I just wanted to give you guys an introduction, a feeling of the book and what it's talking about and the parallels, what's going on today. But it's a great book to invest in. And you don't even have to pay money. You can get it for free on a PDF on vonmises.org. Or you could use the Google machine and just type in the vampire economy PDF. Okay, so socialists want forced conformity. Be that as it may, Rousseau invests the creators, organizers, directors, legislators, and controllers of society with a terrible responsibility. He is therefore most exacting with them. So, Rousseau's words. He who would dare to undertake the political creation of a people ought to believe that he can, in a manner of speaking, transform human nature, transform each individual, who by himself is a solitary and perfect whole, to a mere part of a greater whole, from which the individual will henceforth receive his life and being. It's freaking insane. This is exactly what the fascists said, by the way. Exactly, to a T. I could bring you up the doctrines of fascism, and I believe when I started live streaming the other week, I read a portion of it, and that's almost to a T what it says. Oh, man. Thus, the person who would undertake the political creation of a people should believe that his ability to alter man's constitution, to strengthen it, to substitute it for the physical and independent existence received from nature, an existence which is partial and moral. In short, the would-be creator of political man must remove man's own force and endow him with others that are naturally alien to him. Poor human nature. What would become of a person's dignity if we were entrusted to the followers of Rousseau? Well, we know what, because the followers of Rousseau were people like Hitler and Stalin and Mao. We know exactly what happens when we follow that line of thinking. All right, guys, I see the chat got a little crazy there. These were general study subjects. Yeah, well, I don't know what you do, man, but I'm actually really good at math, but dyslexia does not do well with that because I tend to mess up numbers. So doing something like engineering and stuff like that would not be suited or ideal for me. So I just keep it to learning, I know how to kill people and set up defensive positions. No, I mean, I have some medical training. I got, that kind of stuff, but this is this is me, the warrior philosopher, more or less. And I don't know, have you been on any of the streams, Tahari? Because I know you said something last night when we were in. Oh, appointments at 4:30. Okay, so yeah, I won't be streaming tomorrow, guys. There's no way. Anyways, I couldn't remember because when you're running 2 channels and you don't sleep all the time, I don't always remember who's in what stream, but I know I have a lot of crossover, and I know a lot of you are in other people's streams that I get in the chat with, so it's hard to recall all the time. And trust me, my wife gets mad at me because I forget whatever I'm supposed to remember that she tells me all the time, too. Everything is upside down, which is predicted. Yes. That's kind of this whole series, going through a lot of classical literature and a lot of literature from the early progressive era, and just saying, hey, they told you so. You don't know it. You haven't paid attention. But that's on purpose, too. That's on purpose so they can keep re-implementing it. What's a shame is, in our wealth, in this day and age, with the interwebs, and especially with like freaking Kindle or whatever else there is. I have, man, I don't know how many classics free or $1 I have on Kindle. Now I know this might always be here, but PDF, something, you can print PDFs out, you know. Like what did I pull up here? What do I got? Oh, The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. Okay, so William James is an American pragmatist. I got, so that was what was left up here. I have the Machiavellians in here, which I've yet to read. I'll probably read it to you guys, a little bit of it. I got to go way back through here. I prefer old school books, so I got real ones. I got The History of War, book 1 and 2, the Persian War, from Procopius, and all the volumes of that, actually. I have the Sumerian Liturgies and Psalms, 6 Centuries of English Poetry by Tennyson and Chaucer, Church and State as Seen in the Formation of Christendom. Now, these aren't like books I'm like reading through per se. I used to read a lot more. It's not the point. My point is I have these. They're available to me. And there's no reason why you can't do this. I have The Possessed, The Devils by Dostoevsky. I mean, I have a hard copy of that downstairs, but I have that on here for free, and Crime and Punishment. Both probably some of the greatest books ever written. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like this. In the Reign of Terror, Erasmus and the Age of Reformation. You can find all the stuff for free easily. It's Kindle, PDFs. There's no excuse for it. We're just worried about entertaining ourselves, though. We're worried about stuff in our faces. We're worried about our decadence. And trust me, guys, I'm not sitting here preaching to you like I am beyond reproach. I have to guard myself from those things too. I get involved in those things too. I am a human being. It isn't the falling back. It is the picking up that matters. The picking up and moving forward. You're going to fall back. Failure is life. It is part of life. You cannot learn unless you fail first. It's how it works. So we need to, though, reclaim our societies. And if we're going to break away, any of us who are talking about that, who are really legitimately going to do that, whatever society we have, whether it's just our own family or a few families in a small area, we need to highly, highly instill these virtues into our children. These readings, these are the things that they need to be reading in school. How much nonsense did you read in school? Textbooks? Textbooks are freaking nonsense, man. There's a bunch of nothing. Let's see, you're talking about the draft. I have involuntary conscription in the U.S. Army. The draft works. Well, I could look that up, like, obviously, easily. I mean, it's going to talk about stuff. Justice. Low-income people are more likely to be arrested, to be found guilty, and to serve longer sentences. They're also more likely to commit petty crime, too. You know what smart people do? They don't commit petty crime, generally, unless they're being impulsive. What they do is they do a big crime that's hard to track. All right, let me get back to the chat here. Val says she's the same way. Talkative to everybody, but need alone time, yeah. They've been saying everyone's ambivert now. I mean, you switch back and forth. For me, if you go into like Myers-Briggs, which I know isn't totally accurate, I'm an INFJ, which means I mimic I'll mimic an extrovert. I'm also the rarest type. INFJs are primarily females, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's males. Maybe it's INFJ female. It's the rarest. But either way, INFJs are like the rarest type in that personality breakdown. But it's not as accurate, of course, because it's based on archetypes and those kind of things, as the Big Five, which is literally based on language. It's based on language and behavior and cross-culturally examined. So a much better accurate measure of your personality. All right. Hints and opinion. Leave work. See y'all. Yeah, I already said bye, Val. If they offer Kool-Aid, run for the hills. Grape soda. All right. Weekly narrative was a mess last night. It sure was, man. I just was like, okay, I got other stuff I want to look into before I go to bed. So at like 11, I was like, I'm out. And then they cut off the stream anyways. But I think people were saying in the chat, I know Holly said something about it was YouTube, and I didn't think it was, but maybe it was, because there was some other stuff giving me some trouble. Might have just been my connection too. Hard to say. Oh, well, thank you, Shelly. She said I had a good podcast. YouTube has a lot of audiobooks also. Yes. Thank you, Thane. That is very important. If you're more of an audiobook guy, I can't focus on an audiobook. I have to read personally. And in fact, I write, which is why I like real books. I write in almost everything I read in. I mean, I got like tabs here in my Bible that I put in. I got bookmarks up here. And this is like one of, who knows how many Bibles I have. And then I got, well, if you can see that, sort of scriptures highlighted. Here we go. Let me get to... I mean, if you all can see this, I got little notes there in the side. You can't open a book of mine that I've gone through thoroughly and not find that unless I've decided I'm not marking up that book, which happens, but it's hard for me to get through. I have to write while I'm thinking and whatever else. Obviously, as I'm reading this to you, I'm throwing things at you off the top of my head. This is how it works for me. Honey, you're not an INFJ. You're an INTJ or something like that. You're not an INFJ, are you? No, you are. That's right. That's right, because that was the first thing. Man, see. So I think the first thing I did when because I met my wife online, as I messaged her and she put that, and I said, you're an INFJ? And I said, well, I was like, what's going to keep us grounded? Who's going to keep us grounded? And I was like, I knew it was going to be me. It's not her. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was a Hammer City reference. Kool-Aid. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because of Jonestown. I get it. Yeah. All my other channels were working fine. Yeah, I know there's a weather event there. Yeah. Yeah, I know you are, honey. Dirt. I had a brain fart and thought you were an INTJ for a second. I was trying to upload yesterday and edit a video. Yeah, you told me that, or you said that in the chat last night. I don't know. I pulled up my computer and it started, my laptop, which is older, and it started working. Like I literally, like, my laptop has whatever older version of Windows there was that isn't out now, which I prefer, but whatever. I don't know an ENFP. So you're introverted, feeling, perceiving. I don't know what's the N? Is that the judging function? No, that's the J. Why don't I remember this? It's been forever. All right, guys. Well, that's all I got. I'm going to get out of here so I get memes ready because I got another show to do in an hour and a half on the other channel. But hey, I love you all. Thank you so much for coming over. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for, just watching. Please consider sharing my stuff out to help this channel grow because, again, like, normies are going to get the normie information. There are all kinds of good channels out there that are really big and they cover a lot of mainstream news. But people really need to think about and reflect on the world that came before us, where we came from and where we're going to go, and the parallels, because it will inform us of the future that is coming. No, honey, the E is extroverted. Yeah, the N's what I'm thinking. I can't remember. All right, guys, whatever. I'm going to keep running my mouth if I don't stop. So, once again, guys, like, share, subscribe. If you want to donate, go over to Entropy, DLive, or Subscribe Star. That's it for today. I'll see you guys Friday, if I don't see you tonight, at 7 o'clock over on the Justify the Memes. Thank you so much for watching. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.